My dad was really, really special, and I love my dad a lot.
I'm proud of him, and that even though he isn't here with us, but he died as a true hero.
I miss everything about him.
In the moment that the officers and I had to come see the children, my biggest reaction was, I don't have 7 arms. I have 7 children who just lost their father, and I don't have 7 arms to wrap around them.
I'm Frank Silla, chairman of the Stephen Silla Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Our foundation is committed to delivering mortgage-free homes for Gold Star families and fallen first responder families.
To not have to worry financially is a huge peace of mind. The thought of, what in the world will I possibly do to pay the bills? How will I possibly let the children have a life that feels normal? I don't want them to have to quit their piano lessons or their basketball. I don't want them to feel that we have to move into a little apartment and struggle financially in addition to the emotional weight.
There are over 1,000 families that need our help. Tunnel to Towers is honoring those heroes that risked their lives by providing them with mortgage-free homes.
Those who serve us and then lay down their lives protecting our freedoms and our safety, the least we can do is $11 a month to give them that peace of always knowing there's a home, there's that sanctuary when life feels like it's been tipped upside down, because it has, when you lose a parent in the line of duty, to know you can go home, you can be safe, there's no risk of losing your home. That's a peace of mind that I can't believe you can get for $11 a month.
I'd like to ask you to contribute $11 a month to support their efforts.
Please donate $11 a month by calling 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Today, this breakfast isn't just breakfast. It might be the first McDonald's breakfast you're having at McDonald's again. This lunch might be a weekly tradition you hadn't had in weeks. And this dinner might be the first one you bought for not just you in a while. Whatever this order is for you, McDonald's will be here to take it.
Get more of the chicken you love with a delicious McChicken sandwich for $1. And for an extra $1, add a refreshing Dr. Pepper. Dining rooms are starting to reopen in certain communities at participating McDonald's. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
I'm Noble McIntyre of McIntyre Law, and I've been representing injured Oklahomans and their families for almost 30 years. At our firm, we've handled hundreds of crashes involving semis. They are huge vehicles, and when fully loaded, can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds. Most semi drivers are careful and professional drivers, but some big truck drivers and the companies they drive for are dangerous, and I've personally seen the devastating effects on families. If you or a loved one has been affected by a semi crash, contact us at 405-777-7000 or McIntyreLaw.com. We will fight for you.
Achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell and save 10 cents per gallon on every fill. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
It's back to school season for the kiddos, which means it's the perfect time to get your vacay on. Beaches are empty, resorts are quiet, and Cheap Caribbean Vacations has fall vacay deals up to, wait for it, 45% off.
Plus, you can score more site-wide savings and take an extra $50 off your booking now through September 5th. Take this as your sign to pencil in a vacay this fall and turn back-to-school season into back-to-beach season.
Go to cheapcaribbean.com to find your next all-inclusive vacay. Offer ends September 5th.
You can achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell twice as fast by filling up 6 times with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your your closest Shell. So make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about Platinum status and the Fuel Rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months. 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Y'all ready for this?
Let's get ready to rumble!
Don't look at me in that tone of voice. These kind of nights are like Super Bowls for nerds. I'm Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNRadio.com and also the news desk director of the Digital Beacon. Unfortunately, we've had an issue with the Digital Beacon feed, so we will not be simulcasting this evening, but this is still in partnership with our sister site at Digital Beacon US, which is exclusively putting content out on X only. As far as this feed, you can find this feed on X, on my personal feed, as well as the station feed. You can also follow along at Live 365, Spreaker, KLRNradio.com, Rumble, and YouTube. We will have a panel starting to join us here in just a little bit, and I will also be live blogging with the Twitchy crew at the same time. So it's going to be a jam-packed evening for me and hopefully a lot of fun for you guys, and we will actually be simulcasting the debate from the C-SPAN feed and commenting along as a crew. So we'll have the chat up on the screen here in just a little bit as well, so you guys can play along with us. We have a drinking game that I'll be going over with everyone here in just a little bit. Because, grok is a lovely thing and makes my life so much easier. Because I was like, hey, I need a good debate night drinking game for the stream. And grok was like, do this one. And I'm like, awesome. But anyway, so make sure you guys are sharing out the feed wherever you're finding it. Thank you so much for those of you that are already tuning in. I have some pretty big numbers since we've just been on for like 9 minutes. So I think this one might go a little splody. It's either going to peak early and top out, or it's going to go nuts. I don't know which one it is yet. I haven't been able to figure it out. We've only been streaming on X now for a few months, and we've had some that have gone like gangbusters, and we've had some that have started slow and then peaked really, really big. And I'm just still trying to figure out how the metrics work over here, because I'm a metrics guy. I got to figure out how things work. I will say this. I think half the reason that everybody's still having problems with X, even as much as Elon Musk is a free speech guy, is going to be because of Wiffle Ball Bat Linda. And we may or may not get into that tonight. I don't think we will, because I talk about that all the time on my afternoon show, which is now officially on Tuesdays through Fridays from noon to 3 Eastern, because I have figured out that in my old age, I need at least one day off. And it still won't even really be a day off. It'll be the day of the week that I do all the things that I don't have time to do, because otherwise I'm constantly doing this stuff. But at least it's a day that I'm juggling one less thing. And then unfortunately, one of those Mondays is usually used for errands and appointments and everything else. So, anyway, you guys don't really want or need to hear about all that, and I get it. But anyway, I'm just venting. It's been a long week for me. I've actually been down for 2 days because I got sick. And it was bad enough that I don't know what it was, but it was bad enough that everything hurt. I'm not even kidding. It was bad enough that my teeth hurt. I'm like, why do my teeth hurt? The only thing that I guess I could say didn't actually hurt was my hair. Unfortunately, that's starting to recede, but I guess at 51, I should be happy that I still have this much hair and that it's not all gray. But as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing debate coverage here. We're just waiting for that to get kicked off. We'll have a few folks joining us here in just a little bit, and should hopefully have a full panel throughout the night, kind of rotating in, rotating out. At least that's kind of the plan. So we'll see what happens. And then don't forget, I'll be also live blogging with Twitchy starting in about 19 minutes. We'll be here through the entirety and maybe with even just a little bit of a recap show, depending on whether anybody's got any steam left in the tank by the time we get done with this mess. But I, for one, I don't know about you guys, but I am expecting a bit of a blowout. I know Tim Walz is supposedly the favorite based on what I'm seeing from the media types. I'm not seeing it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Tim Walz has an anger issue, and I think JD Vance is going to be able to push those buttons really quick. And as somebody that's been doing this for a long time, let me remind you, especially with the Veep debates, it's not about who wins; it's about who loses it. And by loses it, they mean who blows up first. I got even money that that's going to be Walls tonight because dude has anger control issues. You saw it with his kid. I wasn't one of the people glomming on and making fun of his special needs kid because I have special needs kids myself. So that wasn't me. But I was watching him yank the kid around the teleprompter and thinking, as the father of two special needs children, that is not how I would have handled that. I would have stopped, gotten his attention and been like, you need to come over here. And then kept walking with him instead of trying to rush him because he obviously was kind of overwhelmed by everything that was going on. You could tell from his emotional reaction. So I don't expect Walls to be able to keep his composure very long. And especially if Vance starts needling him about his service issues. Because again, my issue is not with his 24, 25, 20, somewhere around 24, 25 years of service. It's not, I don't have a problem with that. But apparently he does because he had to start lying about it. That's my problem. If you have to start embellishing your record of the things that you have done, even while you were in those positions, and what you did while you were in those positions, then that tells me you have an issue with your service. It's not my issue, it's yours. So I expect that to come up tonight. I'll also be really surprised if the whole Iran Israel thing doesn't come up tonight. I'll be really surprised if it doesn't. I also fully expect someone on the debate panel to be, especially since apparently it's CBS, to mention crazy cat ladies and Haitians eating pets at least once. I expect that to happen. Hey Z, I see you. You know why we do this song every debate. Nerd, you've been to a few of these. You should know how it works by now. Anyway, but yeah, so I don't know if it's going to be. I don't really know if I expect it to be a blowout. If I'm being completely honest, because first of all, the media is going to spin everything every which way they can for Walls. It's just what they're going to do. It's why he's the odds-on favorite for the night because he's got 16 years of experience, and JD Vance is fairly new. And I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'd put my money on the guy that's done over 100 press interviews and wipe the floor with him every single time, other than the guy that's been to one as an emotional support governor for the current VP. I'm just saying, maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. All right, so let's see what's going on over there. I know they've got some preview stuff going on, so I'm just kind of curious. Bear with me, getting past an ad here. All right, so they're not really doing anything cool, but giving out the numbers for the folks that they want to talk to after. So I should probably follow them on X. I don't think I do that yet. All right, so we got a lot of people starting to show up in the chat, so we're going to bring the chat over on the screen so everybody can keep up. Our chats are open, so for anybody who wants to come into the X feed or the YouTube feed or the Facebook feed, I have the chat on the screen, so wherever you're commenting from, everybody should be able to see it. That doesn't always work, but it's about 90% effective. Rumble, if you guys are over there, you're kind of on your own because I can't see those. But anyway. Why in the world is it? Anyway, I'm confused. Something was really, really laggy there because I haven't had QR codes on the screen for like 10 minutes and somebody just scanned one. Sure it is, Z. Sure it is. Keep telling yourself that. No, Rooster, we're all Groot. It's just how it is. Anyway, yeah, a bit of an inside joke with the KLRN Radio regulars. My girlfriend happens to be in the chat. She gets made fun of all the time. And I am Groot is one of the ways that she gets made fun of. So all right. Anyway, so let's see what's going on around the news before we get into everything debate related. Let's do a quick hit around the cycles here and see what we can find. Let's see. So this is kind of in the vein of what we're going to be talking about. So I guess we'll go through this real quick. I don't know if I'm going to worry about putting it up on the screen. I may just kind of skim through it real quick with you guys and go from there. But this is from Ward Clark from Red State VP debate pre-gaming. What would it take to get the legacy media to admit Walls lost? I don't think that would ever happen, if I'm being honest. Those of us on the conservative libertarian side of the political spectrum understand how unfair presidential and vice presidential debates can be. And as evidence, we need to look no further than the September 10th debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Hamasnik, in which Trump was tag teamed by Kamala Harris and the debate moderators, Davy Muir and Lindsay Davis, both of ABC News. These two people gave gave one of the most appallingly biased, unfair, and partisan performances by any moderators in the history of presidential debates. The VP debate between Republican J.D. Vance and Democrat Tim Walz, hosted by CBS and moderated by Nora O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan, is unlikely to be any better. Unless I miss my guess, J.D. Vance will be fending off attacks from Walz as well as the moderators, but I have a funny feeling he'll do all right. As for poor Tim Walz, he of the clean pink hands and pristine flannel shirts, he's been suffering under the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune the last few days, and the Democrats fearing the worst likely are managing expectations. Even so, the legacy media is, well, the legacy media, and we can count on them to carry water for the Democrats. In any such debate, this begs the question, what would it take to get CBS, ABC, NBC, and the balance of the legacy media to admit that Tim Walz came out of this thing the loser? Le loser. Well, I have some thoughts. Tim Walz actually drools down his shirt on stage. That would be fun to see. This is something we'd be more inclined to expect from Joe Biden, and we have to allow that Tim Walz is sharper than Biden. But that is setting the bar so low that you need a DSRV to find it, but such a display might force the most partisan moderators, and we certainly have seen some of the most partisan moderators, to admit that Tim Walz has lost it. Tim Walz's forehead reflects the stage lights onto the moderators' eyes, blinding them and making it impossible to read their notes, with all the gotcha questions they had written down to zing J.D. Vance with. Tim Walz has a Nixonian sweating breakdown. Nobody likes overly sweaty dudes. A sudden beam of blinding light illuminates J.D. Vance on the stage, following which his suit falls away to reveal stunning red robes. He rises into the air and reveals himself to actually be the Roman god Mars, god of war and protector of the Republic, who then announces that he has come down from Olympus to recognize the United States as the heir to Rome and that we are now under his eternal protection. Short of this, expect the legacy media to be singing the praises of Tim Walz, no matter how incoherent he is, no matter how factually challenged his statements are, no matter how nervous he appears. He will be proclaimed to be a reincarnation of Cicero and the most brilliant VP candidate in history. That assessment will hold until Election Day. And if the Harris Walz ticket loses, maybe, just maybe, the legacy media, as part of their post-mortem, may reevaluate this performance. In the meantime, to keep yourself abreast of events leading up to and after the election, you really, actually, I guess I will do this part because I got another way to handle it. So for those of you who like to keep up with information and not face the bias of the mainstream media, we have something for you here. You can click on this link and get VIP from all, well, you can actually just do site specific VIP or everything to do with Town Hall. With the code libtard, if you go to this link, you get 50% off. Let me check something because normally on days like this, they do have a special code for tonight only. So if you have been considering VP and you haven't gotten it yet, especially if you do the VP Gold, this gets it to you for right around, I think, 35-40 bucks for the year, which would give you all kinds of things, including access to some pretty cool stuff. I've gone through it with some folks on other shows. I'm not going to do it tonight, but you can still use that link. I think. I don't think. Yeah, it should work. You should be able to put in the code FIGHT for 60% off. If you can't, just go find the Twitchy live blog in a little bit, and they'll put up the code as well. So, and thanks, Rooster. That's going up on the big screen. Rooster, I have the Twitchy 10 out of 10. Would recommend VIP. All right. Anyway, so, all right. So, got about 8 minutes until folks should start joining us here, roughly. Wonder if we're going to be able to convince Jeff to come in again. He should be in here. It should happen. He's one of the bosses now. And he saw the all call and the key, so I know he knows how to get in here. Yes, I'm calling you out on air, alien. Just saying. Yeah. All right, so let's see what else we can get into real quick, like before hopefully other people start showing up, but I gotta try to sort of change gears. So let's see. Oh, this is interesting. I didn't see this today. Of course, today was my show schedule was mostly chewed up by Iran Israel news, so I missed this earlier, but I guess it didn't come out until a little bit ago anyway. So this is also from Red State from Mike Miller. In significant free speech when federal judge rules against University of New Mexico and Riley Gaines case. So that's interesting. A federal judge has issued a temporary injunction against the University of New Mexico after it tried to impose a $5,400 security fee on Turning Point USA and former collegiate swimmer and political activist Riley Gaines for her speaking event on campus. Dismissing the school's security concerns excuse, District Judge David Urias' enjointment stems from the public university's fee for an event last October involving Gaines in a subsequent lawsuit from Southwestern Legal Foundation. Gaines praised the ruling in a statement. Sadly, we see this all the time. Conservative students' voices are silenced on campus through excessive fees blamed on security, like in this case, or other red tape that make it harder for conservative students to use their voice on campus. Colleges and universities should be a place of critical thinking, where different ideas are welcomed and encouraged. They should not be a place of political discrimination and suppression of First Amendment rights. Like in this case, we are very grateful that the court granted the injunction and saw the irreparable harm that would come if these high fees were applied to our event. Turning Point USA chapter co-president Jonathan Gonzalez said he was thankful for the ruling, according to comments provided by the Legal Foundation. George Washington University Law School professor Jonathan Turley called the ruling a notable victory for free speech in creating additional precedent against the use of security fees as a deterrent to groups in inviting targeted speakers like Riley Gaines, the noted constitutional authority added. Judge Urias found the fee, constituted such a barrier. So when a policy allows appraisal of facts, the exercise of judgment, and the formation of an opinion by the licensing authority, the danger of censorship and the abridgment of our precious First Amendment freedom is too great to be permitted. Although the question in this case is closer than that in Forsyth, the court nonetheless finds the plaintiffs have demonstrated the security fee policy in this case is similar enough to render it overly broad. Although the policy lists criteria for officials to consider when assessing event security, such as venue size and the location, the list ultimately leaves the decision of how much to charge for security up to the whim of the university officials. For example, the policies don't explain a method for determining how much more security is required for a small venue as compared to a large one, for a daytime event as compared to a nighttime event. Though the security fee policy also states that the police department regularly updates the schedule of the charges based on the factors that the basic cost of security, according to the schedule, will be charged to all groups. There is no schedule of charges. In other words, the University of Mexico, which has a history of shutting down conservative and libertarian speaking events, wings it, creating excuses, otherwise known as lying about fee schedules and such that don't exist. What does exist is just one more example of censorship within the no longer hollowed halls of academia. So, speaking of free speech, before we wrap this one up, I'd be remiss if I failed to trot out TDS riddled Hillary Clinton's latest attack on the First Amendment during a September 16 appearance on MSDNC, where else, of course, the ever bitter Trump hater, when asked about so called disinformation, facts that run counter to the left's narratives, incredibly said, I think that there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda, and whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent. Run that around in your brain a couple times. First Amendment rights be damned. Speech that the left doesn't like should be a crime, proving that the University of New Mexico ain't got nothing on Hillary. The bottom line, the radical left, to reference the old saw, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, insidiously continues to chip away at our constitutional rights. We must stop them in their tracks, beginning with winning in November. All right. All right, let's see where we are. You know what? We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
My dad was really, really special, and I loved my dad a lot.
I'm proud of him, and that even though he isn't here with us, but he died as a true hero.
I miss everything about him.
In the moment that the officers and I had to come see the children, my biggest reaction was, I don't have 7 arms. I have 7 children who just lost their father, and I don't have 7 arms to wrap around them.
I'm Frank Silla, chairman of the Stephen Silla Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Our foundation is committed to delivering mortgage-free homes for Gold Star families and fallen first responder families.
To not have to worry financially is a huge peace of mind. The thought of, what in the world will I possibly do to pay the bills? How will I possibly let the children have a life that feels normal? I don't want them to have to quit their piano lessons or their basketball. I don't want them to feel that we have to move into a little apartment and struggle financially in addition to the emotional weight.
There are over 1,000 families that need our help. Tunnel to Towers is honoring those heroes that risk their lives by providing them with mortgage-free homes.
Those who serve us and then lay down their lives protecting our freedoms and our safety, the least we can do is $11 a month to give them that peace of always knowing there's a home, there's that sanctuary when life feels like it's been tipped upside down, because it has, when you lose a parent in the line of duty, to know you can go home, you can be safe, there's no risk of losing your home. That's a peace of mind that I can't believe you can get for $11 a month.
I'd like to ask you to contribute $11 a month to support their efforts.
Please donate $11 a month by calling 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
And it's debate night in America. We are 30 minutes away from the start of the event. I hope everybody's having a great Tuesday night. That's right. I know. It's debate night. It's kind of like Super Bowl Sunday for nerds like me. So some of you are like, what the hell, man? Why are you making such a big deal about this? Because I love politics. I know that makes me weird. I'm okay with that. That's why I do what I do. Anyway, so we're here. We're live. At this point, I'm just waiting for some of the other panels to start trickling in, which should happen pretty much any second now, hopefully. Because, yeah. Anyway, I hope everybody's having a great night, and thank you so much for hanging out with us here. Let's see what else we can figure out here in just a second. Hang on. You know what? They've got some little side conversation stuff going on, so I think I'm going to bring that up for a second and then wait for other people to start trickling in here.
We've got on one side of the stage a guy who has been a trustworthy leader in Minnesota and somebody that across the Midwest, people in ex-urban and rural areas are starting to say, yeah, this is a guy who's just like me. And on the other side of the stage, somebody who consistently comes across as slick, who constantly lies, admitted that he made up that story about Springfield, Ohio, and the immigrants, and is known to be somebody who's untrustworthy. Mitt Romney, who I think a lot of people respect, he's a Republican leader, has said that J.D. Vance is the person.
All right, so we'll bring the volume down on this a little bit. We've got Miss Aggie joining in with us. Good evening, Miss Aggie. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing all right. I'm doing all right. Getting things kind of kicked off, watching JB Pritzker talk out his butt.
Is it me or has he gained weight?
I would say so from what I've seen. I don't know. I guess maybe the governor's office has been healthy for his, his food bill. I don't know. I don't know how anybody's gaining weight in this economy, man. I think that's half the reason why I'm losing weight. I can't afford to eat like I used to, so it's been helping my weight loss.
Well, what do you mean? She started behind, and remember the Democratic ticket was way behind when Kamala Harris took over.
Jeff, really?
To send out a tweet that there won't be a show tonight.
Better and better and better for Democrats, and now you've seen.
Well, technically there is. There's booze and there's a show. Tell them you're doing debate instead.
Governor J.B. Pritzker in the spin room in New York City, handicapping the race with 34 days to go before the election and previewing tonight's vice presidential debate. We will be simulcasting that debate here on C-SPAN and C-SPAN 2 right now in a conversation.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that on the feed, but I'm going to turn it down because I don't want to listen to her talk. I don't think anybody else really does either. But I just kind of like having the crowd in the background now that we can do video shots.
Are we the only ones here, or?
So far, it's just me and you, but that's usually how it starts. It usually starts with me, and then you, and everybody else starts trickling in a few minutes later. So,
and I was running late. Sorry, I normally take my shower and get in pajamas before any podcast, regardless of the time. So if we were to have a 3 p.m. podcast, I'd be in the shower at 2:15. It's just the way I am.
So this segment brought to you by OCD with Aggie.
It's just I'd rather do it beforehand, and that way I don't have to worry about it afterwards, and I can just go and relax and watch Jessica pin some murder on some poor unsuspecting slob. So I get all that done, and I was running a little late because dinner was late because I was talking to the asphalt guys. So it has been a day.
Trust me, I know. I've been sick for 2 days. I don't know what happened. I actually felt pretty good Saturday, and then we went to the wedding, and then I woke up Sunday, and we didn't go to church because Gracie got stung by a bee at the wedding, which was kind of unfortunate. But so then about noon, I'm like, okay, I need to get up. I got work I got to get doing, and there's things I really need to do for the end of the month. And then next thing I know, my body was like, no, not happening. I felt so bad. Even my teeth were hurting. I'm like, how am I feeling so bad that my teeth hurt? The only thing that wasn't hurting was my hair. Everything else from like my entire body was just like, yeah, we're done. And it was that way from like one around 12:30, 1 o'clock on Sunday, all the way through till this morning. This morning I woke up and felt fine. And I was like, what the hell? But yeah, I did nothing but almost the entire half of Sunday and all of yesterday but sleep. So I woke up today feeling like I was really behind. That's when I finally figured out, you know what? I need to just set one day, at least most of the day, as a day off instead of trying to do all the things 7 days a week. 'Cause I think my body's trying to tell me I can't do that anymore. But
Well,
anyway,
God did rest on the seventh day. I'm just
I
saying.
know. I know. I figure if even God has to do it, I guess I probably should too. I think maybe that's the hint I've been trying to be given. This is now the second time in 3 months that I've just been like, I can't do nothing. Anyway. But yeah, so what are your predictions for tonight? You got any major predictions?
I'm guessing the cat thing is going to be brought up, whether it's the cat lady remark that Vance said or the eating of dogs and cats thing. The cats are going to make an appearance, a healthy appearance on this debate. I'm wagering. And I have a fairly good idea that the gal from State of the Union is going to try and correct Trump Vance quite a bit. She, every time I watch him on State of the Union, and she just goes after him. He's really under her skin. So watch for that to happen. Although I'm hoping that they learn the lessons from the ABC debacle and the debate there, but never know.
Wait, the media learn lessons? Are you sure?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that even happen? I don't think that happens. I don't think that happens.
No, not really. It never happens. But, there's always hope. Pandora did close the lid and left hope in there. So here's hoping. Fingers crossed. But I'm pretty sure those two things will happen. I'm pretty sure that none of Waltz's connections to China are going to be brought up. And if they are brought up by Vance, they will be shut down.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, I mean, there are several things that we can pretty safely guess will happen. I'm not sure I can partake on the Grok game, though. I might pass out after 10 minutes.
Oh, I don't know. I expect pretty much the same treatment we got from the last one. I think it's going to wind up being 3-on-1. I think the difference is Vance is already pretty used to that, where Trump doesn't ever seem to learn any of those lessons. I think Vance will do a much better job if it does turn into a 3-on-1. I think Vance will do a much better job fending things off. I also think that Vance will most likely be the one to do a much better job to get under Walz's skin because he already seems to have a short fuse. And if he can get him to lose it on stage tonight, that'll be all they wrote.
Well, first, Waltz has been saying that he's not a good debater. That little rumor started a few days ago. And then you have Harris talking about how she was sleep deprived when she picked Waltz as her running mate. And I'm like, excuse, you were sleep deprived? This is what you're going with, that you were sleep deprived when you made the choice. And nobody's buying that. Nobody is absolutely buying that. Minnesota is too important for one thing, and for another, Josh Shapiro being Jewish was toxic to her campaign.
I don't understand this choice in Walz. I still don't. I mean, eventually the choice of Vance started to make sense to me because I could kind of see why they went with him. I can kind of see why Junior started bending Daddy's ear and be like, "This is the guy." Because one, even though the media keeps trying to use it against him, the fact that he is someone who once was one of these people that thought Trump was the devil and now understands that he is the best person for the job right now, that is a positive that should be being spun a lot more by the people who want Trump in the White House, because it's happening more and more. I saw 2 or 3 big name people today after the Israel-Iran thing that were like, that's it. I'm not on the fence anymore. I may hate him, but I know he'll stop him from getting a bomb. I've seen, and Stacy was one of the first ones I saw put something out from somebody that said that. And I've seen 2 or 3 others since then. And that's the thing. The longer this goes on and the crazier this world gets, everybody's like, okay, he may have had mean tweets and he may be an a-hole, but we want him back. And that like I said, with JD being one of the people years ago that was like, yeah, I think he's the wrong choice. I think he's basically, I mean, he was one of the things he used to say all the time was, I think he's Hitler. I think that needs to be being explored more by the party and being talked about if this is how you felt before, what made you change your mind? I don't know why there aren't any people on our side that interview him that ask him that question, because I think this is something that needs to be explored in depth so people can understand why he doesn't think that way anymore. Because I'm with him. For the longest time, I thought the guy was the devil. You remember, you were here 2015, 2016. I wanted nothing to do with him. And then he got into office. And I was like, I still don't really, I'm afraid we're going to glow in the dark in 6 months. And then we didn't. And then he completely won me over. And then after 2020, with all the BS that he started spouting with in the beginning, of course, they couldn't find anything. So I was like, I don't really know about all that. He needs to just shut up and move on from it. But now here we are 4 years later, finding all these little issues that would have been just enough to put enough thumbs on enough scales to make things go a little bit wonky, which is exactly what happened. And now I'm back to being fully on board again, not just because of everything that's going on right now, but because now they've tried to kill him not once but twice. I'm going to vote for the guy they're trying to keep out of office at all costs. That's who I'm going to vote for.
Well,
because they don't want him in there.
One of the people I follow here on X was talking today about how he had planned to sit this out. He's a never Trumper. But what happened between Iran and Israel today completely changed his mind. He now sees the gravity of the situation in terms that most people still don't see. And this is something, I don't know if you ever watched the movie with Nicole Kidman and the idiot George Clooney. I forgot what it was called, but it was about, they were racing to find somebody that had a hydrogen bomb or an atom bomb. I don't even remember what it was. It was a nuclear device. But she did make a statement that really drove it home for me. She said she's not afraid of those that have a bunch of them. She's afraid of the guy that has only one, because his plan is to detonate it. And I'm looking at Iran and I'm going, the moment they have one, they have plans for it. It's not that they're going to be stockpiling so that they can be seen as strong. It's that they have plans to detonate that sucker. And so for him, that was an eye-opening salvo, And so now he's looking at it going, yeah, I can't afford to sit this out. And it cannot be with the same stuff that this administration has been doing. He is now forced to see that he has to make sure that his vote counts and that it doesn't go towards, the Democrats because of what happened this morning in Israel.
You're not being oppressed, Gene. I'm trying to do 14 things at once. Hang on, I'm about to drop you the link. It's in a chat you already have access to, by the way. But I'll send it to you very special and separately, sir. There you go.
Oppressed.
It should be. Hang on.
But, I have, a lot of friends that are saying, yeah, that, whatever's happening over in Israel, that's none of our business, blah, blah, blah. They're the same people that are saying we should give all this money to Ukraine. I'm going, Ukraine is further east. I mean, I don't understand how it is that the Middle East it's none of our business, but the Far East happens to be our business. I don't get that at all. And of course, they come back with the whole, well, Putin's evil. And I'm going, there are no good guys in this fight. I cannot stress this enough. The people are the ones suffering. The people in charge of the fighting are not. And I can't make them understand that. To them, it's like, Ukraine is completely being, to use Jean's word, oppressed, and Russia is this really horrible, mean fighting machine. And I'm going, so why is it taking so long? If they're that good, why is it taking so long? Why is this being drawn out so much? And why did Zelensky say if Trump wins, we have to end this war? Because he knows the gravy train is done.
Well, yeah, I mean that's most of it. Hey, Gene, how you doing, man? Mr. Oppressed? You
Yes, I'd like to speak to your. I'd like to speak to your manager, please.
Whatever, Karen.
Hey! Shout out to Zelda. We did it. We beat the system.
You're in a chat that had the link already in it, sir.
Listen, I have been to. I'm working on 3 hours sleep. I had 2 different court appearances in the past 2 days in New York City, which is 3 hours away. I'm fried, okay? Zelda's my only friend. I barely like you, yet I'm coming here to raise the ratings on your stream. So you're welcome.
Whoa, hang on. Something's glitching out.
See? Oppression again. He's trying to suppress my voice, folks. Chat. Just do me a favor, chat. Everybody just type oppressed in the chat in support of me. Thank you.
You guys are.
This is true. Stephen said that apparently North Carolina is none of our business either. And that was one thing that I did notice on CNN this morning. Abilio Acosta. I refuse to call him Jim. Forget it. His name is Abilio, and I call him that.
All right. Stephen has decided to oppress me as well. So he's on my list now. Stephen, you made the list.
Anyway, Acosta had, was talking about how Trump lied about North Carolina not getting any FEMA support, nothing from the administration, blah, blah, blah. And he had the governors of Florida, the governors of Georgia and Virginia saying that they're, things are taken care of. They have everything that they need, blah, blah, blah. But he did not have the governor of North Carolina on saying anything. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If he was talking about North Carolina, why do you have all the other governors, quoting all the other governors? Shouldn't you be talking to the North Carolina governor to tell you that, yes, we do have stuff on the ground. Yes, we do have, resources and things are getting better and everything. And Trump lied. They didn't ask the NC governor. It was such a hack job.
I mean, the whole setup that side's been trying to do for a debate is it's just weird. Like, you're trying to tell me that a guy who's been in Congress and in government for 16 years is nervous about debating?
Yeah, it doesn't track.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, Amish. Once it gets below a certain number, I can't see anybody until they say something without scrolling. And I didn't hear a noise for you, but you should be on stage now. So
it's oppression.
Well, Rick, I'm worried about the beer supply. After this case and the other case, we only have one case left.
I'm worried about the beer. I'm worried about the beer supply because this damn mobster running the stuff in the South is going to make us all poor again.
There's no such thing as the mafia. If this is an Italian Heritage Month, I take offense. You are oppressing me.
You say that about everything, so I don't care anymore.
There's a lot of oppression going on.
Oppressors normally don't care about the oppressed, so I'm not surprised.
I don't care about the oppressed.
Talking about the mafia during Italian Heritage Month. What is wrong with you?
Oh, did they finally get their own month? That's fantastic.
We've always had our own month. Columbus Day, it's here. Deal with it, God, you got me so choked up right now. Yes, thank you, Zelda. Poor Gene. I agree.
Italian Heritage Month. So does this mean everybody should go out and buy lasagna or what?
Racist! You, sir, are racist. How dare you? What
Well,
are
it means
you
we should
doing?
go out, buy Vespa, and then lose a war.
As long as you're riding the Vespa
And
going
appropriate the shit out of pasta.
as long as you
Right.
are riding the Vespa, going around the street without a care in the world, just saying ciao to everybody, then it's all good.
Oh, all right. So, Gene, since you were one of the most recent ones in, and I haven't started making around the table yet, what are your predictions for tonight before the craziness gets started in a few minutes?
In the immortal words of Clubber Lang, prediction, pain. Honestly, this is the most useless night in the political calendar, the vice presidential debate. The last memorable one was in '88 with Lloyd Benson telling a young Dan Quayle that you are no Jack Kennedy. If there's any news made out of this, it'll be forgotten in 24 hours or so. I think this is for the wonks, and we'll see what comes out of it, especially given the news out of Israel today. And, of course, prayers to everybody there, including my associate's son, who is with the IDF as we speak, who is working in intelligence right now.
Gene, I have to correct you. The last most memorable vice presidential debate was the one in 1992 with Admiral Stockdale saying, "Who am I? Why am I here?"
Yeah, that was pretty epic.
I'm sorry, I'm too busy talking to my oppressed friends. G. Rooster, you the man.
I was oppressed once, and then I got a salve.
Oh, well, lucky you. Why don't you brag about it?
I think one of the most awkward.
In all honesty, if foreign policy and talking about Israel and Iran is not the first question asked, then what the hell are we even doing here?
All right. Well, hang on a second. This link has only been given out in 2 places that I know of, both of which are fairly private, and there's a name in here that I don't recognize. So, hi. Who this?
Are you talking about Mike Banning?
Yeah, what the hell? Way to confuse again.
Well, it's like
Way to
you've never
confuse
seen
me, guy.
London Has Fallen.
Yes, that's his thing.
Any relation to Rex Banning?
See, and I almost
Nope.
logged in as Turd Ferguson.
That I would have remembered from last week, but no, I've never seen this one log in as Mike Banning before. So I was like, what?
All right, guys. Clearly, nobody got the memo. I'm the comic relief.
Oh,
No,
okay.
you're the plucky comic relief. They're just the comic relief.
No. They're a little more than No. They are funny as all get out. I just don't want to be upstaged because I know they're better than me at this stuff.
Would that be oppression, Gene?
Hell yeah.
Well, if you want me
we
to
can't
upstage you, I'll
oppress-
turn my camera on.
Please do. Let's see those gorgeous, enchanting eyes that I fall into every time.
Okay, my camera's staying off.
That's disturbing.
I think you guys might need to go find your own room. So we're getting a...
Are you trying to kick me out? Are you trying to kick me out?
Man, it got gay in here.
Listen,
Suddenly we're in a Minnesota high school bathroom.
The oppression is palpable. The chat knows it. Everyone knows it. What kind of ship you running here, Rick?
The good ship Lollipop. That's all I got.
All right. In all seriousness, does anyone really think that a vice presidential debate, while early voting is going on, is really going to mean anything?
Mike can answer that with a yes, and his name is Jake Tapper. This afternoon, he literally said this could be the most important vice presidential debate in history.
Ever since the last most important vice president. I screwed up the jokes. Sorry. Yes, it's the most important since the last most important. I'm sure.
I was going to correct him and say it wouldn't be the most important. It would be the first important, if that were the case.
You're here for one job and you already flubbed it, sir. You had
Yeah,
one job.
well, listen. I'm drunk. You're drunk. Everybody's drunk.
I mean, it's debate night in America. Who the hell ain't drunk? Just saying.
Everybody's going to get laid.
All right,
I wouldn't
Stephen
go that
Hall
far.
with a great comment. VP debates are purely for mockery and amusement, and that's why I'm here.
I mean,
So to answer your question, though,
yes,
show around that.
Since the Harris campaign is already throwing Tim under the bus, they know that this is just going to be an absolute clubbing, and it'll be indicative of more indication of Kamala's horrible choices. She was already born of a horrible choice when Biden chose her. So this is just going to highlight they are the party of really stupid decisions.
Okay. So can you catch me up on that, Brad? Because I've been fighting for truth, justice, and the American way in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, respectively, this week. What do you mean by the Harris campaign has thrown walls under the bus?
Oh, that was already that said that. They had, you know what? Hang on. Let me find the.
Did I
talk
say
amongst
that?
yourselves while I find the exact quote.
Cool.
Okay, I have a question.
I have an answer. Let's see.
Is it absolutely necessary that we watch the debate while we're doing this?
Yes.
Because I'm about 10 minutes into Godzilla versus Biollante, and I'm not turning the movie off.
I mean, the debate will be streaming here, so you can watch whatever you'd like, sir.
Yeah. Hey, wait, which Godzilla movie is it?
Versus Biollante. They also dropped Return of Godzilla and Godzilla versus King Ghidorah on Max. So they actually have some
that's the one they based on Shakespeare's Othello, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely.
Has anybody seen Godzilla -1?
Oh yeah, it was an excellent movie.
I loved it. It was fantastic.
Excellent movie. I still prefer Shin over that, but -1 was really, really good.
I took a date to that movie, which means I had a +1.
So you made that even.
Okay, Gene, to answer your question, the exact quote is Kamala Harris says she suffered from insomnia after Biden endorsed her and that she was sleep deprived the morning she chose running mate Tim Walz.
Holy shit, that's an actual quote? How have I not heard that yet?
Oh yeah, that's why
yeah.
I brought it up at the beginning when I got in.
I bet you it's somewhere in the recesses of that brain that she's thinking to herself after today in the true spirit of Saul Alinsky. Man, I wish I would have picked Shapiro.
Well, I just think that comment speaks very highly of her decision making.
It also speaks to a political opportunism as well, I believe.
All right.
And then I see Josh Shapiro this afternoon on an interview with Fox, and this guy is just sharp. He's in tune with the world. He's in the moment. It's like, yeah, you don't want somebody like that on your campaign. Hell no.
Well, that's because he'll make her look retarded. That's why.
My reply to the New York Post article on Kamala Harris's saying she had insomnia was, I was punch drunk and retarded and didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know I was picking this creepy fuck, but at least he wasn't a Jew.
What? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
I mean,
that was the entirety of that decision.
Yeah. Let's see. I can get a really popular governor, or I could get Tim Walz. Well, the popular guy's Jewish. That's not going to look good to the Hamas contingent.
That's the thing about Shapiro. You give him more credit than he deserves. He's popular everywhere except in Pennsylvania. And the only places he's popular in Pennsylvania are Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, which are the only populous areas. That's where all the votes come from.
Well, that's like
if you're talking about
in California.
If you're talking about outside of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, which is basically Pennsylvania, everybody despises him.
I thought I was the only one who
20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race.
All right, folks.
Presidential
I don't agree with Shapiro. I'm just saying he's a
CBS
sharp
News vice presidential debate starts now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's a savvy operator.
We are ready to continue to build the future together. We're to turn this whole country red with President Trump's leadership. You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News
Does anyone have a
special,
stopwatch?
live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America decides.
Now the question is CBS going to keep to their thing saying, we're not doing the fact checking, that's the candidate's job.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce
consequential. I thought it was the vice president.
Not gonna lie, Nora O'Donnell looks good.
And Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight.
All right, can I get a volume check from the chat? I'm trying to make sure the levels are good for everybody. Our voices versus theirs.
Toast. Toast.
It's kind of low on the actual feed.
Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further
Unless they
points,
decide to
with an
fact
additional
check.
1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules.
Oh my gosh, she sounds like the proctor before taking a bubble test.
Claims made by each other. CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene, and now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
I like Margaret Brennan's jacket. I didn't know the debate was sponsored by T-Mobile.
Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened.
Wait a second. I thought Kamala said we didn't have any troops in
I was going to say that.
And it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now
debaters to fact check.
or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind.
Hey, you're welcome, Tim.
October 7th,
Thanks,
Hamas
Tim.
terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners.
They heard that in Michigan.
Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is
Israel's
matter.
proxies?
It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that.
Interesting
It's those that
segue.
were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense,
the guy that brokered peace in the
his
Middle
national
East
security
and ended
advisors
the terrorist
said he
group
should be
for
nowhere
4 years.
near the
Abraham
White House.
Accord. Hit him
Now,
with
the
a
person
JD.
closest
Actually,
to
I'm
them,
still waiting for him to actually answer the
Donald
question.
Trump said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've
Is this
seen
your first
out
debate?
of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership.
No, but
we've seen a
I-
calmness that is
I
able
remain
to be
hopeful.
able to draw on the coalitions to
Yeah,
bring them
that
together.
one or two questions might be answered tonight.
Understanding that our allies
That's all
matter.
secondary
When
at these
our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin,
That question,
turn
Nora, let me
towards,
answer a completely different one
North
for you.
Korea. When we start to see that type of
I
fickleness
mean, he's
around
taking a
holding
page
the
directly
coalitions
from
together,
Kamala. They let her
we
go
will
get
stay
away with it.
committed.
Of course he's
And
gonna
as the
crap.
vice president said today is, we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance in life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me.
I was born
and
a
she
poor
raised me in
black
part
child.
because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college
I was
on
born
the
in a
GI Bill
crossfire
after I
hurricane.
enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude
The details
for
of
this
my
country,
early life
for
are
the
quite
American dream that made it possible
inconsequential.
for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are
Don't mention the
worried about the
Shorn
chaos
scrotum,
in the world
please.
and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to
Again?
try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies. And God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump
Stuck the incumbent on
recognized
her.
that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed
One of
to
the guys from
recognize that
Newsbusters
if they
was
got
watching
out of
CNN
line,
and they were
the United
arguing
States
that if
global leadership
J.D.
would put
Vance wins the
stability and
debate,
peace
it's
back
going to
in
end up
the
bad
world.
for him in
Now,
the
you
end.
asked about a preemptive strike,
Oh,
Margaret,
Lord.
and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor
Hell of a
Walz, do
start.
you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot
Joe Biden
was
giving
letting
them
Iran make
billions of
nukes
dollars.
anyway.
international airspace.
Is there a
Donald
drinking
Trump
for the
tweeted,
amount of
because
times
that's
he
the
mentions
standard
Trump?
diplomacy of Donald Trump. And
God, I
when
hope not.
Iranian missiles
Thank
did
God.
fall near U.S. troops,
There is
and
now
there were
a
traumatic brain
suggestion
injuries,
having-
Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal
Are you
with
debating
Iran because
four
the
walls now, ma'am?
consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what, the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now.
I got to say, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable seeing somebody competent at one of these debates.
But when did Iran
Don't scare it away.
Hamas,
Don't scare it
and
away.
proxies attack Israel? It was during the
Don't make eye
administration of
contact.
Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy
he already
and
looks
peace
like
through
he's
strength
about
is
to go
how you
nuclear.
bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already
I'm
done
waiting
it
for
once
his
before.
China
Ask
ties to be
yourself
brought
at
up,
home,
how he's going to look then.
when was the last time? I'm 40 years old.
You're
When was
so
the
lucky
last
this isn't a
time
football
that an
game. I had
American
a
president
play
didn't
call
have
that
a
would
major
knock you on
conflict
your
break
ass.
out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record.
Yeah, I'm going to
More
say it
than
again. Nora still looks great.
160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing.
Wood.
Scientists say climate
Good Lord,
change
man.
makes
Clean
these
yourself up.
hurricanes
Yeah, wood.
larger, stronger, and more
Gordy, this is
deadly
a debate.
because
Can we
of the
please focus on
historic
the boobs
rainfall.
policies?
Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60%
I seem to
of
recall you and
Republicans
I
under
just
the age
completely
of
losing it over
45
Moana
favor the U.S.
in
taking steps
the
to try
last
and
few
reduce
years.
climate change. Senator,
And she's going to be my write-in candidate.
would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people
Hey,
lost
Brad,
their
you should
lives. And
tweet
I'm
that
sure
thing
Governor
about
Walz
being
joins me in saying
a
our
little
hearts go
uncomfortable
out to those
because it's
innocent
weird
people,
seeing
our
somebody
prayers go out to
competent at
them,
this thing.
and we
I'll
want
put
as
it in Twitch.
robust and aggressive as a federal
That was
response
a
as
good
we
line.
can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards
Jeez, I gotta
to help
tweet
the
that
people
too. I'm
in those
also in a
communities
live blog
rebuild.
at
I mean,
Red
these are
State
communities
tomorrow.
that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the
Oh, come on.
Southeast.
If I
They
can live
need their
blog and do
government
this,
to
and
do
you
their
can live
job,
blog
and
and do
I
this,
commit
you can do one
that when
too.
Donald Trump
I'm
is
I'm
president
multiple
again, the
tasking.
government will put the citizens of this country first.
You
when
don't
they
have
suffer
to
from
do it.
disaster.
I just thought it was a great
Nora,
line.
you
I
asked
wanted to
about
put it
climate
up there,
change.
but
I think
never mind.
this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do?
Oh, wait.
The answer is that you'd want to reshore as
That's
much
later in the
American
month.
manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors
like he
know
resets
no
every
partisanship.
30
They work
seconds.
together to so all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen.
Walz is suffering
Senator
from
Vance
the
has said that
Brian
there's a climate
Stelter
problem in the past.
syndrome.
Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in.
Guy looks
What
20
we've
years
seen
older
out
than
of
he
the
actually
Harris
is.
administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a
I can control the weather.
At the same time, you're creating the jobs.
I'm pretty
that
sure
we're
Vance
seeing
already
all
said
across
that.
the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Senator. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not
way too much
folks. These are not
time.
folks that are
Nobody
Green
cares
New Deal
about.
folks. These are
Viewers are
farmers
tuning out
that
as
have
we
been
speak.
drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our #1 export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing.
Pretty sure that's exactly how the
conversation
conversation went.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues.
So we just had our first fact check.
Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally?
One of
and separate
Tim's
them
family
from
members
any
is
of
at a
their
watch
children
party
who
and he's
were
wearing a
born on
shirt that
US
says
soil?
"Walls for
You have
Trump."
2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into into
Coyote
office,
can't
she
carry a
said she was
person.
going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish
Nobody
she would
remembers
do
that?
Both of
It would
them
be good for all of
are
us.
able to just spew forth
Governor,
numbers and things.
What
care
an
to respond
answer.
to any of those specific allegations, including that
What
the
a
vice president
perfect
is,
answer.
quote, letting in
Allegations.
fentanyl
Oh,
and
good Lord. I
using
guess
kids
it's a
as
3-on-1.
drug mules, among other things.
Yeah,
regarding
well,
that's not a good look.
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis.
Drug
It's the
mules?
opioid crisis. And the
He's
good news on
he's
this
lying.
is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most
she
of us
didn't.
want to solve this.
She didn't prosecute
and
nothing.
that is the United
Well,
States
listen,
Congress.
regardless
That's
of whether
the
she
Border
did or
Patrol
not,
agents.
isn't it
That's the
amazing that
Chamber of
Kamala
Commerce.
Harris
That's
doesn't
most
talk about the
Americans out
biggest
there.
job
That's
she
why
ever
we had
received?
the
She'll
fairest
talk
and the
about her
toughest bill
prosecutions in
on
California. She'll talk
immigration
about
that this
everything
nation's
in
seen.
California,
It
but when
was
it comes to being
crafted
vice
by
president,
conservative
she doesn't
senator
tout
from
her own
Oklahoma,
record.
James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And
Oh,
the Chamber
he
of
opened the
Commerce,
Border
Wall Street
Patrol
Journal
door.
said,
Vance
pass
better
this
walk
thing.
right
Kamala
through it.
Harris helped get there.
The Border
50
Patrol
more
leadership
border
that would have
agents.
made the money.
Detection for
How about
drugs.
who the Border Patrol endorsed?
DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to what
Because
would
the
Donald
House
Trump
bill
talk
is
about if
actually
we actually
tough
did some of
on
these things,
border.
and they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this, and he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we
And
are
Joe
again,
Biden
9
stopped it, you
years after he came
dumbass, in
down
his
that
first week in
escalator,
office.
dehumanizing people and telling him what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point,
Isn't he
Senator
going over
Vance
time?
said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at.
10
Pass
seconds
the bill,
over.
She'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up.
Yeah,
Senator,
10
the
seconds to go.
question
What the
was,
fuck?
will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim
Kick
said
both
just
the
doesn't
parent
pass the
and the
smell
child
test.
out,
For
and
3
they can come
years,
back when they're
Kamala Harris
adults.
went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
You only got a minute for rebuttal.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Lankford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue
I'm sorry,
to
isn't
make it an
Langford
issue.
the one that
And the
created the bill that
consequences in
he himself
Springfield
didn't
were,
sign?
The governor had to
Yeah,
send
because they put so much
state
crap
law
in it, even
enforcement
he was
to
done with
escort
it. But
kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance
And they're
wants to
acting like
solve
this thing would have had a
but
prayer
by
in the House,
standing
it
with
wouldn't
Donald
have.
Trump and not working
Well,
together to find a solution,
but that's
it
the whole
becomes a
purpose for
talking
most
point.
of these
And when it
bills they
becomes a
put in,
talking point like this,
right? It's
we
not that they want to
dehumanize
solve
and
anything. They just
villainize
want to
other human beings.
villainize each other.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but
Walt
let me
made an
just
interesting pivot there.
ask
He's
you the
trying to
question
separate
first.
Vance from Trump
The
now.
governor has made the
He
point,
knows he's losing.
and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern
Joe
border
Biden
more than our
signed like
borders are.
40
Kamala Harris has
executive
been.
orders his
And it's
first
actually
week in office,
heartbreaking
and a
because
quarter
the Border
of them
Patrol agents,
removed
they just
border
want to be empowered to do
policies.
their job. Of course, additional
There's nothing to
resources
do
would
with
help,
purse strings.
but most of this is about the president and the vice president.
Well, how many
empowering
executive
our law
orders have
enforcement
been
to say,
made over
if
the
you try
last
to come
20
across the border
years that
illegally, you've got to stay in
didn't go
Mexico.
through
You've got to
Congress
go
for
back
purse
through
strings?
proper channels. Now, Governor Waltz brought up the community of
Too many.
Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look,
That's because y'all were going to give them a bunch of money not to do anything.
Not dealing with it.
But who does the Border
Migrants
Patrol
for everything.
think is the best
On housing,
to solve
we could
the
talk
border
a little bit
issue?
about Wall Street speculators
Person they
housing
endorsed
and
is
making them
Trump.
less affordable. But it
Yeah,
becomes a blame.
the leadership
Look, this
endorsed.
bill
But
also
a lot of the
gives
border
the money
patrols
necessary
themselves,
to
they'll tell you
adjudicate.
something different.
I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done.
It's like the
This
union
bill gets it
didn't
done in 90 days.
endorse
Then you
anybody
start
because
to
the
make a
leadership
difference in
wanted
this,
Kamala,
and you
but they
start
saw
to
that their
adhere to what we
membership
know,
didn't.
American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do
He
unto
never
me.
talks
I
about
think
faith,
that's
period.
true of most Americans. They
What
simply
faith?
want order to it. This
You
bill
support-
does it.
he supports
It's funded. It's
killing
supported by the people who do it, and it lets us
unborn
keep our
babies.
dignity
I'm gonna say,
about how
don't
we
talk to
treat
me
other
about
people.
faith, dude. You support
Thank you,
killing
Governor.
babies.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well,
Nora?
Margaret, but
Thank you, Senator. We have so
first,
much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
gonna turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on.
Good on
So
him.
there's an application
Yes.
called CBP One,
That's the man.
where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal
And
process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since
Please don't interrupt
1990.
my condescension.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
The
We wanna
CBP
have-
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, you're,
Oh, now
the
they're shutting
audience
off
can't
his
hear you
mic.
because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the
Yeah,
legal
well, shut up
process.
and get to it.
Uh,
Stop
shut
trying to
up.
commit.
Margaret. The
Stop putting
Y'all
your
economy
supposed
finger
to
on
is
the
ask
a top
questions
questions.
and
concern
just
for
sit
voters.
there and
Each
look
of your
pretty.
campaigns
Not that
has
you're doing
released
well
an
at that
economic
either.
plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning
He's
the
looking at
deficit?
his note
Governor, I'll
cards,
give you 2
isn't he?
minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yep.
Kamala Harris
Thought
and
they
I
were
do
supposed to have
believe in the
notes.
middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We
He's been jotting
understand. So
stuff
those
down
of you
all
out there
debate.
listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's
That or
healthy.
he's
That's
got
what this is
a
supposed to
iPad
happen.
and having
You
to
should be
answer
listening.
stream
How's
to
this
him.
going to impact me?
Yeah,
The
he's got
bold
notepad.
forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is one is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3
Free
million
money.
new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an
And who
asset
pays
to be
for it,
traded
you
somewhere.
stupid
It's foundational
asshole?
to where you're at. And then
Hey,
making
can
sure
we
that
give
the
a
things
shout
you
out to
buy
the
every day, whether they be
316 some odd
prescription drugs
people
or
in
other things, that there's fairness
us
in
right
that.
now
Look, the
watching this?
$35 insulin
Thanks,
is a good
guys.
thing. but it costs $5
Actually, there
to
are
make insulin.
386
They were
total
charging
across all states
$800
right now.
Well,
for
my
insulin
thing is a
when
little
they
slower
were
than yours because
As
you're
far as the
oppressing me.
housing goes, I've seen it in
No, you just
Minnesota.
can't. We're on
12% more housing than
Oppressor,
Minneapolis. Prices
oppressor,
went down on rent
oppressor,
4%.
oppressor.
It's working. And then making sure tax
Only
cuts
because
go
it's
to the middle
Italian
class.
Heritage Month and you deserve all the
$6,000
oppression
tax
you're
credit.
getting.
We have one in
will not be
Minnesota.
divided.
Okay. Let's not
childhood
get
poverty by
bogged
a
down
third.
on
We
who
save
oppressed
money in the
who.
long run,
Okay.
and we do the right thing for
We
families.
will not be
and then
divided.
getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is
Y'all are triggering me.
$5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave
Brewster
the tax cuts
just
that predominantly went to
inspired
the
me to
top
do
guys.
something.
What happened there
What
was
scripture
an
did he
$8
quote again?
trillion
Wasn't it Matthew
increase in the
24:40?
national debt, the largest
24:40.
ever. Now he's
Pretty
proposing
sure that's the
a
rapture.
20% consumption or sales tax on
God, I
everything
hope
we
so.
bring in.
I can't
Everyone
take
agrees,
much more of
including
this.
businesses, it would be
Yeah, 2 men will
destabilizing
be in the
it
field,
would
one will be
increase
taken, the
inflation,
other
and
left.
potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is
You know, it
simple
just
for
dawned
you.
on me
Where are we going?
who
Kamala Harris
my-
has said to
he's
do
not
the
a
things she
used
wants to
car
do.
salesman.
We'll just ask the
Who's the guy
wealthiest to
you
pay
talk
their
to in
fair
the
share.
finance
When you
department
do
when you're
that,
trying to sign
our
the
system
paperwork?
works best. More people
Fair
are
share
participating in
BS.
it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is
I'd
drive
like to
the
see,
cost of
because
food
Vance said
higher
anything
by
about the fact that
25%,
Kamala has
drive the
hidden
cost of housing
Biden's
higher
condition
by about
from
60%,
the rest of
open
the
the
country.
American southern border,
No,
and
not
make
yet.
middle
I'm
class
waiting to
life
see if that ever
unaffordable
happens.
for a large number of
That'd be
Americans. If
fantastic.
Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country.
Walz
That is
looks
a
like he's
record that I'm
copying off
proud
the
to run
paper.
on, and we're going to get back to that
I was
common
about to
sense
say, it looks like
wisdom
he's taking
so that
notes
you
for a
can
test
afford to
later.
live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I
busy.
know
I mean,
that's
a lot
better
of
than
you are
Kamala, who
paying
always
bills.
looks
There's
like
It's
fear in
gonna
those
stop when
eyes.
Donald Trump
Look at his eyes
brings
when he
back
listens
Kamala
to him
always
about
looks
these
like
chairs.
she's asked to
Governor, do
give
you
a
want to
book
respond
report to a
that?
book
What
she
has
didn't
Kamala
read.
Harris done for the middle
Yeah,
class?
well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression.
Didn't more
9
people
million
die
jobs
from
closed on
COVID
that.
under
That was day
Biden
one.
Harris?
Whether it was the Infrastructure
Same.
Act or other
Well,
things.
I'm
we
waiting
moved.
for
Now,
Vance to
you
come
made a
back.
question
And
about
why
this.
were they
Said
out of
this.
work?
I've made a note of
Because
this. Economists
people,
don't
your
can't be
states,
trusted. Science
kicked him
can't be
out,
trusted.
told him they couldn't work.
National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? And the last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged
Donald
about that.
already
We're
said
just
that. The
asking for
system was
fairness in
broke
it, and
because
that's all
it
you
allows
want.
him to do
You
that.
have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop.
Love this
and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom. Which
He was
is
talking to
Donald Trump
RFK Independence
Senator,
right there.
Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas.
Not a topic to bring up today.
Not
Really?
How come the union didn't endorse you?
I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald
someone
Trump
hasn't been
was the guy
keeping
who created
current
the largest trade deficit in
on
American
events.
history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my community.
Speaking of, I
and
liked
we talked about
Musk's
that.
quote about the union
have
president. He's all, dude has more
People
yachts
you
than
better
I do.
nail that. To collectively bargain.
Man's
We
got
had
an
right
opening.
to
You
work
better
states
walk
made it
through
more
it.
difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
A whole 250,000?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a
show
gross
that he
generalization.
did.
Yes.
So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver.
Margaret, he's using my own words against me. That's not fair.
You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you've simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens.
Somebody call 911. We just witnessed
who would
a murder.
sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household.
Come on, give it the
I know
knockout
what
punch.
it's like to
You're
not
gonna-
be able to
I'm so
afford the
close.
things
I'm so
that you
close.
need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back
Is
to an
the
America that's
medical
affordable
examiner
again.
covered
We
on
just gotta get
Kamala's
back to
health
common
plan?
sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you, Margaret.
We have a lot to
Anyone
get
need
to
a cigarette?
ahead, gentlemen, on many topics.
Yeah.
But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last
I need to
voice
clean up.
the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz,
Uh-oh.
you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring
Tiananmen
of
Tim.
1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
Uh-oh.
What?
Can you explain that discrepancy? You have 2
Yeah,
minutes.
well, and to the folks out there,
I
you get
use
at the
bad
top of
grammar.
this. Look, I grew up in small rural
I have a stutter.
Nebraska.
I grew
town
up in a
400,
middle-class
town that
family.
You rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17. worked on
Oh, can
family
we talk about
farms,
that, please?
And then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the
Okay.
opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China.
Are
35
we
years ago, be able to do
getting
that.
to
I came
the
back
answer of the
home
question?
and then started a program to take young
Nope.
people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers,
He's
and
got
we
a
would go
minute
back and
25
forth
to get there.
China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you.
They
I
buy
have
my
poured
lies.
heart
What
into my
about the rest of
community.
us?
I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to
At
Congress
times.
for
Apparently
12
the
years.
time is
Times.
between 8
in
and 10
Congress,
p.m.
I was
tonight.
one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans
There is
benefits.
no
And
answer
then
in
the
our
people
future.
of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning.
Tim, we were talking about China.
To make sure that I get this right. I will say more
Katie's
than anything.
looking at like, please keep talking.
I will talk
Sir,
a lot.
this is a
I will get
Denny's.
caught up in the rhetoric. But being there,
Excuse me, sir,
the
this
impact
is a
it
Wendy's.
made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID.
Advantage
And
just
I
by-
guarantee
I'd like to
you
give
he
the rest of
wouldn't
my
start a
time to
trade
Tim
war that
Walz
he
to
ends up
actually answer
losing.
the question.
So this is
Right.
about trying to
I surrender my
understand the
time.
world. It's about trying to
He
do
looks,
the best you
Vance
can
looks
for your
confused,
community.
like, what
And
the
then it's
fuck are
putting
you
yourself
talking
out
about?
there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things
He
that
was
I
not a
think are
good
the
soldier
values that
according to
people care about.
his
Governor,
platoon.
just to follow up on that, the question was, can
He's
you
so good at
explain
teaching,
the
nobody
discrepancy?
that he
All I
taught
said
went
was
to
I got
the
there
Ivy
that
League.
summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
Bad grammar.
Misspoke? Oh,
So
you
I
mean
was
like,
in
For the win!
Hong Kong and China during the democracy.
sir, like your
protest.
sergeant major?
And from that, I learned
Every
a lot
sergeant major.
of what needed to be in
Shout out to
governance.
Sergeant Major Galloway, E9.
Thank you, Governor.
Retired.
Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example,
Gordy,
where
you're
I
going to
think
like
we could have
this.
done so much more if the Republican Congress and the
I just looked
Democrats
at
in
trending,
Congress
and it's
had been
VP
a little bit better
debate.
about
And
how they
fourth,
govern the country. They
ending
were
with
so
weird
obsessed with
science.
impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually
Nice.
govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights.
Oh, God.
After Roe
God, I
versus
don't
Wade
have
was
enough alcohol
overturned,
for
you
this.
signed a bill into law.
I have it on good
that made
authority that
Minnesota
men
one
are
of
not
the
allowed to
least
talk about
restrictive
this.
states in the nation when it comes to
Oh, so I got to
abortion.
run with this, don't I?
Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind.
No, it's
Donald
not.
Trump put this all into motion.
It's
He
the economy,
bragged
stupid.
about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor.
This story's a complete lie.
But in Texas, that would have put them.
But whether it
in
is or
legal
not,
jeopardy.
it's not
She
abortion.
went home,
It's not
got sepsis,
reproductive
nearly
care.
dies,
That's
and now she may
life-saving
have
measure.
difficulty having
That's
children.
medical malpractice.
Or in
Medical
Kentucky,
malpractice is based upon
Hadley
state
Duvall,
regulations,
a 12-year-old child,
and rules and law.
raped and impregnated by
She
her
had a
stepfather.
miscarriage, which isn't
Those are horrific.
banned by the
Now,
law,
when
and
got
she
asked
went
about
to a
that,
walk-in
Senator
health clinic
Vance said,
that's
"Two
not
wrongs don't
permitted
make a
to
right."
perform
There is
any
no
kind of
right
invasive
in
procedure.
this. So
And
in
they're trying to blame it
Minnesota,
on an
what we
abortion
did
law.
was
But
restore
yeah, regardless of which,
Roe
this is
versus
all
Wade.
state
We
law
made
and
sure
state
that we
mandates
put
and state regulation.
women in charge of their health care. But look,
The states
this is not,
reserve
if you don't know
the powers to
Amanda
govern
or
health care to
Hadley,
themselves.
you soon will. Their Project 2025 is
Oh,
going
here
to
we
have
go.
a registry of pregnancies. It's going to
Okay,
make it more
drink.
difficult,
Sure it is.
if not impossible,
Project
to get
2025. Here we go.
contraception
Drink.
and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so
I've
many
been
of you out there
drinking every
listening,
time
me
the mouth,
included,
his mouth opened.
infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody
Y'all are
else's
behind.
business. But those
Rick
things are
told me
being
to drink,
proposed.
so I got it. Hang
And
on.
the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many
Oh,
other
talk
countries
about
in
the
the world.
Born
This is
Alive
about healthcare.
amendments in
We are
Minnesota.
ranked first in
Please.
healthcare for a reason. We trust women. We
Babies
trust
born
doctors.
alive were
Senator, do you
left
want to
to die.
respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about
What?
this issue because I know a lot of Americans
Holy
care about it, and
hell.
I know a lot of
Now he
Americans
lost my
don't
vote.
agree
God damn it.
with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I
All
are
right,
endeavoring
folks.
to do. I want
3
us
o'clock
as a
comes early in the
Republican Party
morning.
to be pro-family in the
No, I
fullest
will
comes
listen
at the
to
same
this.
time
I
every
want
day.
us to support fertility
He's
No,
talking
it
to
comes
the
I want
early
us to make
every
it
time.
easier for moms to afford
All right,
to
have a great
babies. I
night,
want
Andrew.
it to make it easier for young families
I'll listen
to afford a
to
home
listen
so
to
they can
y'all
afford a
tomorrow.
place to raise
Night,
that family.
guys.
And I think there's so much
99
that we
minutes.
can do on the public policy front
Shit, I'm out
just
of
to
beer. I'll be right
give
back.
women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today.
And the baby
That's
be
why
dead.
the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President
This
Harris
is
talk
another
about
one
this
that's a
subject, and
lie.
you hear me talk about it, you hear us
Giggly.
talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to
and
not
part
be
of being
that.
pro-women,
women having
is being
miscarriages,
pro-abortion, apparently.
women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true.
Okay, real
We
quick,
also make
Amber
it, we're a
Third,
top 3
she
state
didn't die
for the
because of
best
the
place
law.
to
She
raise
died because she
children.
took the
But
abortion
these two
pill.
things
She's
to try
delayed
and
getting
say
care for an
that we're
infection,
pro-children, but we
and
don't like
the
this, or
care
you
that
guys
she
are
got,
pro-abortion.
even according
That's
to
not the case
ProPublica,
at all.
said they can't say
We
that
are
was because of the law.
pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base
Free
that on
money.
the fact of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she
Here it
was.
comes.
And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into...
Vance is sizing up the ball on the tee right now.
It says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to
Avoiding the
distort
Minnesota
way the law
law.
is written to try and make a point. That's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me. What was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this.
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged. That's been
He's not
miswritten. It was
answering.
fact checked at the last debate. But the point on this is
He's
there's a
not answering at
continuation
all.
of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this. Just mind your own business.
If
On this.
your
Things
law
work
is so
best when Roe
good,
versus Wade is
Okay,
in place.
just mind your
When
own
we do a
business. That came
restoration
out.
of Roe,
Drink.
that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals. They get early childhood education. They get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to
That
move on. And we're
resulted
going to
in
be right
procedure
back with much
numerous
more
times
of
to
the
the
CBS
point that he
News
changed
Vice
the
Presidential
reporting
debate
of the
in
law.
just a moment.
All right, we're at halftime. Wow.
So he didn't answer. He didn't tell Vance where he was wrong about the law. Correct? I mean, I couldn't find
No, after all of that, at the end, Vance said, "You didn't answer." He's all, "No, that's not the law, but it is the law."
That's exactly what the law says.
No, okay, so getting beyond all the reproductive rights nonsense, which they spent way too much time on. If this was the presidential debate, they'd be calling it off right now, and Vance would be the winner. But this is a vice presidential debate. I don't know how many people are as interested in it as we are. But if you tuned it, most Americans, I think, are going to, like in most debates, are going to tune out for this second hour. They think that this was the main event. The top issues were addressed: the economy, foreign policy, et cetera, et cetera. And man, did Vance just mop the floor with him. The facial expressions from Tim Walz alone, just looking like he's panicked. He's got to feverishly take notes. When he has to speak to, extemporaneously, he is just lost. And then he has to go back on a slogan. And once he gets to the slogan, he's okay. Vance is just cool, calm, collected, talking to everybody by their name. Just amazing. Really, really good.
This is why I'm surprised they keep inviting him on the Sunday talk shows.
I think they keep inviting Vance so that they can trap him into something, and they have not. They haven't figured out. They have not unlocked that achievement yet, because they keep. It's almost like they're punching themselves in the dick.
All I can really say about what I've witnessed so far is that I was just outside having a cigarette, and I heard 2 cats having sex out behind the house, and I found that far more interesting than this debate.
So who do you declare to be the winner?
That says some very
they were both winners from the way they were going at it. Hammer and tongs, baby, hammer and tongs.
Speaking of winners,
wow.
Scott Pressler on X. It's 9:37 p.m. at the time we posted this. J.D. Vance won the debate. No question, it's over. I think a lot of Americans will turn off the debate thinking the exact same thing. Another one from Pressler. Vance did a great job introducing himself to the American people. Very polished, positive messaging. Eric Bowling. Walls. I'm a knucklehead. Great line that there's a line that'll be remembered and mentioned a lot in ads.
Megyn Kelly is really upset.
Oh,
she's been calling out CBS the whole time.
See, what I find interesting is this is where you actually get to see 2 different political classes, because governors speak in sound bites, senators speak in filibuster.
Mm-hmm. But so far, the sound bites that have been coming out from Waltz have not been solid. They've been pretty floundering, and Vance has caught him on several occasions.
Oh, Vance, if you're an independent, had the line of the night already.
If you're an independent watching this debate, if you're an independent watching this debate, J.D. Vance has been the only one talking to you. He's pointedly talked about things that have been independent talking points, especially RFK Jr. talking points out there, talking about, better health care for all to make America healthy again. It's one of the taglines that came along with RFK Jr. And it seems like the only one that is going to gain voters from this is J.D. Vance. It feels like Tim Walz is preaching to the converted a lot here.
He keeps repeating what he has been, I guess, coached to say during the campaign. And he does not, I don't think he has the ability to be as quick-witted as Vance is.
No. And by the way, the biggest mistake I think Tim Walz made tonight so far is the response to the first question about Israel. And I guarantee you, Rashida Tlaib, people in Michigan, and Ilhan Omar's people, they heard that.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back to the CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to turn now
We're going to take a moment because Tim Walz is still in the corner with his cut, man.
The leading cause of death for children and teens in America
and his whoopee
is by firearms.
Looking at his note sheet, shit.
Legislation that Democrats
Second Amendment, get ready for Tim Walz to say he owns a gun.
You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban
certain
semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress,
in Minnesota,
in my office, surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and I here's what I do think.
Who is stopping research?
Conversation.
No one is stopping research. Why else don't?
Hates it.
That's why we have all of the statistics.
And it breaks your heart. I agree with that.
FBI keeps statistics on guns all the time. The problem is many big cities aren't reporting to the federal government. Who runs the big cities?
Have this happen, even though they have a high
New York,
gun
Los
ownership rate
Angeles
in
are
the
not
country.
even reporting.
There are reasonable things that we can do.
But crime is
to
down.
make a difference. It's not.
Well, of course,
infringing
crime
on
is
the
always
Second
down
Amendment.
when you don't
And the
report there's
idea
any
to have
crime.
some of
Throw
these
New Orleans in
out
there too, by the way.
It just doesn't
Oh,
make
shit.
any sense.
Well, there's
Kamala
hundreds
Harris, as
of
an attorney
LOEs that
general,
aren't.
worked on this issue. She knows that it's there.
From
Hell
Cobra
yeah.
Commander
Someone's trying to
15.
scaremonger
Hey,
and say we're
Caesar
taking your
Pound.
guns
Sounds like
away.
JD
Ask all
Vance
of
is
you out
debating
there.
so well, Jonah will
Do you
tweet
want
about
your
his dogs
schools hardened
tomorrow.
to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly, weird
Finland
differences
is
between
not
our
real.
own country's gun
What the
violence
hell?
problem and Finland is.
If it's not real,
first of
how
all,
come Monty
we
Python did a
have
song
way
about it,
higher
huh?
rates of mental health.
It was a shout out for our
abuse,
friend
or
Jeff.
mental health, substance abuse. We have way higher
'Cause they're
rates of
in on it,
depression, way
Vincent.
higher rates of
Yeah.
anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of.
For
because
those
I
of
don't
you
think it's the
on
whole
X
reason why we have
and are
such a
looking
bad gun
up
violence
things,
problem, but I do
look
think it's a
up
big piece of it.
VP Debate
Another
2024
driver of the gun
and
violence
Shapiro.
epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an
And for
assault
those of
weapons
you
ban,
viewing,
but only later in your
just look
political
who's the only
career
one that has
did
the
you change your
courage to be on
position.
screen
Why?
right now.
I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA.
I don't
was
think I
NRA
should
guy
be
for a
on
long time.
screen.
They used to teach gun
Because
safety.
you want us to be, you
I'm
want
of an
us
age where
them to see how
my
oppressed
shotgun
you
was
are.
in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today.
Tim Walz is friends with
Several
school
things I
shooters. He
wanna mention
admitted
on
it.
this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves.
We should
And
arrest
so
those people.
We have, and we should look at all of
Thank
the
you,
issues.
Stephen.
Making sure folks have health care and all that.
The
but I want to
oppressed
be very
shall
clear.
rise.
This idea of
He's
stigmatizing
vapor-locking
mental health,
bad.
just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think
those
that this
evil
is one,
guns.
and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor.
Mr. Vance, why do you want to kill children?
The high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time
Free
homebuyers
money!
and a $10,000
So,
tax credit.
does anybody remember Cash for Clunkers?
3 million
Yes.
new homes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Where are you building these homes and
God
won't
damn it, now I
handing
got the
out
call
that
for
kind of
kids
money
song in
just
my head.
drive
What
up
the hell,
prices
man?
higher?
No, it's not handing out.
And if you haven't
First,
seen
let
the
me say
Fat
this.
Files,
This
he
issue of
just did one
housing,
on the
and
Cash
I
for
think those of
Clunkers
you
thing
listening
too.
on this,
So
the problem
it's fantastic
we've had
watch.
is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm
Housing
thinking
is
of
not a
Christmas
commodity?
services
What?
after midnight mass where you go
Right.
with your family.
It's your
We
only
need
commodity.
to make it more affordable. And one of the
Apparently,
things,
he
as I
sold
said,
his
this
house
program
when
that the
he
Vice
became
President
governor
is,
because he was going to live
pushing
in the
forward
governor's
and bringing a
mansion.
new way of approaching this is something we're doing in
That's some
Minnesota from
forward
that
thinking
lead.
right there.
We in the state
Mhm.
invested in making sure our housing
So
was
he
the
has
biggest
absolutely
investment that
no
we'd ever
real
made in
estate.
housing. It starts to make
Unlike
it easier. We
Harris,
cut some of the
who
red
apparently
tape.
has
Local
3 or
folks, look,
4.
we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier
Plus
to
an
build those homes.
observatory.
And then that down payment assistance. I can tell
Yeah,
all
I
of
don't
you out
count
there,
that one,
one of the
Oh, no.
obviously.
Oh, she doesn't have
But,
the deed, probably.
using the GI Bill was one thing.
Rent with an option to
but
buy.
a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value.
So it's not
generates the
free
wealth that's
money.
created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing
How does a city have
state
lower
program to make sure we get some of that
inflation than
down
the rest
payment
of the
assistance.
country?
We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame
People with stable housing
immigrants
are
for the
getting
only
fucked
reason.
with
That's
by
not
their
the case that's
HOA.
happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing.
Guys,
but we can
notice
make sure
that
the government's there to help
Walz is no
kickstart it,
longer
create that-
doing the blame
create
Donald
that,
Trump
base.
thing.
Governor, your time is up.
Vance
Senator
has outdebated him so much that he's
as far
forgotten
as
to
your
do that.
campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on
Wait,
immigration.
why would the
which you
federal
say
government
pushes
have
up
to seize
prices.
federal lands? I'm confused
Where are you
by
going to
that
build
statement.
all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home
Well, that and
prices
BlackRock buying
that
them all
happen
up.
right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal
Hey, you
land?
can have
you
it,
clarify?
pal. I'll give you one.
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for a national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
is affecting
Allegation?
I guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're
That's
able to make some
common
investments.
speak.
That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said
People
you don't
owning
like the
stuff,
economists.
I'm against
Which
it.
economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's
your
the study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also
Eat
the
that
regulatory
study,
regime
biatch.
of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, We have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis.
Man, she's
I
been
can
saying that
tell.
all damn
But
night.
Nora,
Come up with a new line.
One of the top problems facing Americans is the high
And I'm
cost
sorry, did
of
I
healthcare.
hear Walt
Senator
say that he
Vance,
was friends with
at the
school
last
shooters?
presidential debate,
Yeah, that's
President
actually
Trump was
the
asked about
It's
replacing
time for
dominant
Vance
thing
to
in my
clean
feed
up.
right now.
In response,
It's time
he
for Vance to
said,
clean up Trump's
"I
mess
have
on healthcare.
concepts
Let's
of
see
a
what he
plan."
does.
Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and health care costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better health care policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA.
At Tiananmen Square.
And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means
The courage
to you
of
is
John McCain.
you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma,
So
too
when
bad.
Trump
If you're a
lost at
woman, probably
SCOTUS,
not.
he
Broke your foot
pivoted,
during football,
he
might kick
compromised,
you out.
and
Your
he
kids get
improved
kicked out when they're
healthcare.
26.
Thank
Kamala
you for
Harris
making the
negotiated
point.
drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10
Now,
drugs
dude,
that
Joe
come online,
Biden getting
the
shot
most
down
common
by
ones that'll
SCOTUS
be there.
repeatedly,
But
but
look, this
pushing
issue,
his
and when
stuff
Donald
through
Trump
anyway on
said,
the student loan
I've got a
debts.
concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work.
Causal connection between gray hair and cancer.
The ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results.
There are so
not just
many
complain about
memeable moments
problems,
from
but
Tim Walz
actually
right now.
solve them.
It's
Governor,
crazy.
did enrollment under the
My feed
Affordable
is
Care
full
Act
of
go
them.
up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this.
Yes,
young
thank you,
people,
Donald
whatever,
Trump.
That's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you
happens
think the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
you shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
I would like to point out that the guy who tells everybody else to mind their own business wants to force them to buy insurance.
Let's talk about families in America.
Wait a second. Did
child
Tim
care
just tie
crisis
Kamala
in
to the
this
Biden
country,
administration in
and
that
the United
last
States
sentence?
is one of the very few developed
Well, he just gave her
countries
credit for
in the
actually
world
doing something
without
after
a
saying the
national
vice
paid
president
leave
doesn't do
program for new
anything.
parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns?
Oh,
You have 2
Jesus
minutes.
Christ. Is this really
Yeah,
where we're up to
that's
right now in
negotiable,
debate
and
topic?
that's what Congress works.
We're
But
scraping
here's
the
what they
bottom of the
notice.
barrel of lefty
Americans
ideas? Is that
sitting
what
out
we're
there
doing?
right now. You may work
Pretty
for
much.
a big
That's what
company.
we're doing.
Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days.
Every
after
state
my
has
kids were born.
FMLA.
This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens.
Why
You
are
end
you
up
so
staying home.
fixated on
In some
cancer?
cases, that means
Tim
no
Walz is
paycheck
wishing
because you've
cancer
got
on
no
people.
protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set.
Well, thanks to
Just
Joe
amongst
Biden,
us.
I can't
He's
afford
willing
cancer.
to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business. And then
There
to
are
make
no
sure that
states
folks are
that
able
do
to
not
pay for it.
have
We
the
were able
Family
to
and
do it in
Medical Leave
Minnesota,
Act,
and I'm still telling you
but
this.
some states
We
have
were listed
additional
as the best
paid
state. We're still
family
in
and medical
crisis
leave.
on this.
So he's
A
advocating
federal
for even
program of
more.
paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support
And
a
murder the
national
ones you
paid
don't.
leave
Oh, wait.
program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable.
He's got Walt nodding along with
Hey,
him.
hey, Tim Walz just turned into a JD Vance voter.
And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very
I'm going to have to duck out of here myself. It's been a blast, but you guys go have fun with your masochism.
President Trump committed
have
to
a
the
great night.
$5,000
So,
per child tax credit.
I got to give this
that
one
you
out to
have
Mickey
described.
Blowtorch.
You have 1
It would be a lot
Well,
cooler if
what
the
President Trump
moderators
said,
just
Margaret,
started
I just
making
wanna
out with
defend
each
my
other.
running mate here a little bit is
Yep,
we're
make it
gonna be
happen,
taking in
CBS.
a lot of money by
Ew.
penalizing
What do you have?
companies for shipping
You have like
jobs
an elder
overseas
fetish?
and
What's up with
penalizing
that?
countries who
It wasn't
employ
me, it was
slave
at Mickey
laborers
Blowtorch.
and then
I thought it
ship
was
their
funny.
products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan.
Besides,
Cut
they're
taxes
around
for
our
American
age.
workers and American families.
Don't give me that
Cut
look.
taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize
Your
companies and
reach
countries that are
should
shipping
always
jobs
be
overseas. That's
longer
the
than
heart
your
of the
breast,
economic
my friend.
proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit.
Okay, I got to
proposals.
admit, I didn't like that
Do
answer.
you think Congress will agree
No, it wasn't
to
a great
the
answer, but
$6,000
there
credit
is no
for
great answer
newborns
to that.
and $3,000
And honestly,
credit for children
who's
over
watching
the age
right
of
now?
6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Us and 499 people on our feed.
Yes, and we love all of you wonks out
This
there.
is the
but
biggest issue. Everybody listening to
they're not
me
talking
knows. I mean, I'm
to
sure
you.
they were
They're talking
shocked to
to
hear it's not that
independent
expensive.
voters right
And let's
now
be clear,
who actually
whether it's
care to tune
5,000 or
in.
6,000, that plays you about 3 or 4
And I love you
months.
wonks.
Let's be
You guys
clear
are the
where we're
best.
at on this. It's because
You don't
we got
oppress
out
me
of
like
an
Rick.
imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying
Hey,
them. I don't
it's
think Senator
Italian
Vance are
Heritage
that-
Month.
are that
This is
way.
my month to oppress
Talking
you.
about on options. We've done
oppressing,
scholarship
right?
types
Let
of
Tim
things.
Walz
I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, If those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation.
J6 time,
The
everybody.
2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud.
Incorrect. Nobody looked at evidence. It was all thrown out for technical reasons.
Republicans and Democrats certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships.
Hey, Z, you might want to go out and come back in. You're not coming through at all.
Technology companies silencing their fellow citizens, and it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of
I was
Bobby
born
Kennedy
and
Jr.
raised in a
and
middle-class
Tulsi Gabbard,
family.
lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course,
I
they
love
don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue.
really
I'm
do.
glad that
Have
he's
to agree on every issue.
so trolling.
We're
It's
united
great.
behind a basic American
Can everybody
First
hear me?
Amendment principle that we ought to
Yeah,
do
we got you
now.
Yeah.
We ought to
Okay.
argue about them. We ought to
I was
persuade
saying,
our fellow
can
Americans.
Donald Trump just
Kamala
like be
Harris
his
is
vice
engaged in
president? Like, this is
censorship
too
at an
good. This is
industrial scale. She did it during COVID.
he's
Yeah, that's
blocking
not-
the
that's-
over a
floor.
number
Well,
of other issues, and
That's
that
not
to
how
me
any
is
of
a
this
much
works.
bigger threat to democracy
I
than
know
what
that,
Donald
but
Trump
I mean,
said when he said that
Wait, hold on a
protesters should
second.
peacefully
We have
protest
seen
on
a
January the
president
6th.
withdraw and a vice president take the top of the ticket.
Well, I've
So why
enjoyed
can't it
tonight's
happen
debate,
again?
and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to Ms.
Don't
Meaden on
encourage
things,
this.
And I think I might have with the senator. But
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag. Several later died, and it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state Capitol
Are you
grounds
on your
in St.
router
Paul
or
and said, "We're
not?
marching to the
hold on.
presidents and there may
Yeah,
be
I'm on.
casualties."
I'm on the
The only
Wi-Fi. Let me
person there
try
was my son
something.
and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake
Yeah,
here.
better than
now,
it
the
was.
thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words
So he's against
matter.
imprisoning
People hear
political
that.
opponents?
So
Just
I
checking.
think this issue of settling
I
our
don't know what it
differences
sounds
at the
like,
ballot box,
but that's not
shaking
what his
hands when
party
we lose,
stance is. So
being
I'm confused.
honest about it, but to deny what happened. on January 6th, the first time in American history.
I'm just wondering what that frog comment was about. Was that
Tried to
some
overturn
thing I've
a
never
fair
heard
election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here
Frogs
we
in
are
the pot
4
is
years
an
later in the same
expression.
boat.
You
I
can
will
look it
tell
up
you
for
this,
sure.
that when
I've
this is
never
over,
heard
Frogs
that
boiling in the
we need
pot.
to
You
shake
keep
hands
raising the
this
temperature,
election,
keep raising the temperature
and the winner needs to be the
until
winner.
the
This has got
frogs
to stop.
stop
It's tearing our
boiling.
country apart.
It's like a
Ugh.
Senator Vance,
it's
did
a
you
way
want to
to
respond to
compare how
Yeah, well,
Americans
look,
are
Tim,
tolerating
first of all,
things until
it's really
next
rich
thing you know,
for Democratic
socialism.
leaders to say
Gotcha.
that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done
Been
for
saying that
250 years
for
in this country.
years.
We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016
Tim did not like
Donald
that.
Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like
Look at his face.
$500,000
He's so
worth
mad
of
about
Facebook
that.
ads. This has been going on for a long time.
Like, you just had
And
me
if we wanna
agreeing with
say
the
that
fucker, now I
we
want to
need
punch you in the
respect results
face.
of the election, I'm
That's
on
like the
board.
third
But if we
time
wanna
Vance
say,
has done
as
that
Tim
to
Walz
him,
is
though.
saying that this is just a
Saying
problem that
nice things and then
Republicans have
zinger,
had,
and
I
he's
don't
like,
buy that.
"What?"
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement.
hate
This is
frogs.
one that we are miles
He's
apart on.
trying
This was a
so
threat
hard
to
to
our
come off as this
democracy
like
in a way that we had
tactful,
not seen.
like I'm a
And it
bipartisan
manifested
guy.
itself because of Donald
Like,
Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020.
I was wondering
We've
if you
talked
was
about
gonna
it.
nail
I'm
him on
happy to talk
shit.
about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together
so lost
afterwards.
and
You
so
can't yell fire in a
flustered.
crowded theater. That's the test.
That's a
the Supreme
lie.
Court.
Yes, you can.
Yes,
You
Fire in a
can.
crowded theater. You
You
guys want
That's
to
a
keep people
lie.
on Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah, well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused.
Your running
and now
mate
again, and this is
compelled
pretty
them
shocked by
to
this,
silence
he
people.
lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
So,
all right. So
Frank,
while we're on a break, I'm going to turn this over to our resident attorney. Can you or can you not yell fire in a crowded theater?
yes, you can. The case that Tim Walz was talking about was actually overturned.
I was just
Let
going
me,
to say that. Yeah.
let me just get the name of the case. Hang on. I'm going to look for the name of the case. But while I'm doing that, Frank Luntz tweeted out.
That was Shannick versus United States.
I was actually talking about Brandenburg versus Ohio, guys.
Okay, that one, yeah.
That would be the one I was saying. But Frank Luntz tweeted, at the first commercial break, my VP debate focus group said by a 10-3 margin that J.D. Vance is winning. That is a big deal since only 5 of them were leaning towards Trump Vance when the debate began. So could I be wrong that the vice presidential debate actually means something?
I think in a normal cycle, you wouldn't be wrong. But since nobody's really been able to figure anything at all out about Harris, this is the only real look they're getting to see at the overall ticket. And I don't think they're liking what they see.
Well, I mean, the first half of the debate is the only part that matters, in my opinion. Luntz also said this VP debate is a model of how political discourse should work. I would agree with that. And that he misjudged J.D. Vance. He really is a good communicator and a great debater. Tim Walz has given viewers more details about more policies tonight than his running mate has all year. So
yeah, the problem is they still don't like the policies, though.
Yeah, and also, I've become friends with school shooters may be the worst line in any 2024 debate.
I couldn't believe he said that. I mean, that might be the world's worst line of all time of any debate.
Okay, well, even when he said make friends with school shooters, I get what he's going for because, school shooters are generally the loner fucking outcasts. But holy shit. They're not a school shooter until they become one. That's when, anyway.
My only issue that I have with JD Vance, my only issue with JD Vance is the fact that he didn't debunk the Amber Thurman BS. I think if he would have debunked that, he'd have an A right now. Right now, he's about at like a B+, but I would say like if he had debunked the Amber Thurman crap that Walt put out there, I would have given it. I'd have him at an 8 right now. Like this is, I've never seen a debate where it's like, except for when Trump was debating Biden, but Biden's barely cognizant, where somebody's just completely mopping the floor with the other person.
Well, I think Zelda, my darling, my dear, my closest friend in this whole setting right now, I think that 90% of the American people watching this didn't know who Amber Thurman was. I think you are ahead of the curve. And I think that you have what they call the curse of knowledge because you are well educated on that issue and that one case study, that you take great offense to more details about that not coming out. But do you think that in 48 hours, any average normie out there is going to care about the name Amber Thurman? Unfortunately, I don't think so, which sets you apart as a better person than most, honestly. But that's really the political reality of this. Americans don't have time to look up. I don't even remember the other person's name he mentioned. I know Amber Thurman because it pissed you off, but I don't remember even the other person he mentioned in that segment. Nobody. Does anybody else remember the other name?
I'm gonna say I don't.
You're honestly, now that you put it in that perspective, I see where you're coming from, and I'm like, yeah.
I mean, if Rick doesn't know the name and he's one of the wonkiest of the wonks, what about the average American?
Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Win the coin toss.
Thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look,
even he knows nobody's watching.
It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this
503 sets of eyes, and you're wrong.
From Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that That better
than it is
the
your
sense
party,
of
bro.
optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by,
Drink.
but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something.
Oh,
Not
it's
the
the
freedom of
vibes,
government
y'all.
to
It's
be in
the
your bedroom or
vibes.
exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself.
Drinking.
Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself.
That was
Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that.
It makes people
All the
he cares
while
about
asking
afraid.
everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard.
I think he
Let's
did.
look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail, food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
Nobody cares. Freaking
oh, wait,
Barbies.
can we see if Trump and Harris come out?
Hang on, let me see. I'll mute it, but leave the feed going.
Yeah, you can mute it. That's fine. You oppress everybody else. Why not them?
Gene, get
I'm only
you have
oppressing
Gene's
you.
approval.
I'm only oppressing you because it's Italian Heritage Month.
And the truth shall set you free. It's on video. He said it. He's been oppressing me. He has singled me out. He has singled me out. Why? Is he threatened by me? Does he think that I'm going to take over KLRN radio? Does he think I'm going to become the most popular host outside of him? Does he think...
I singled you out. Like, hey! I don't have Wayne syndrome here.
I'm speaking.
I don't have Wayne.
Does he think that KLRN will turn on him and turn?
Now who's speaking? Now who's speaking?
You muted it.
Now you are being oppressed, sir, because nobody can hear you. I don't have Wayne Dupree syndrome.
You see, I don't even have to say anything anymore. He just proved it to you all. Thank you very much for unmasking yourself, for self-identifying, Rick Robinson, you oppressor, you cis male white oppressor. How
Are
dare
you
you?
not? Are you not cis? Are you not? You know, all that? Like, are you saying that you're actually a woman?
Answer the question, Robinson.
She's talking to you, bro. She's not talking to me.
Yeah.
Answer the question, Robinson.
She was talking to you.
I doubt it. My friend Zelda would not cast such aspersions. She wouldn't do that to me. Anyway, so to be serious, and I just want to put this out there to you very, very smart people. Was that not the modern day Nixon Kennedy debate?
Pretty damn close. I would say yes. But yeah, since this is officially over, and I don't plan on keeping the feed going for too much longer because it's been a long day for me, I do want to get from the panelists that are left your scorecards. So we have. Hang on, I have names for these guys because I went the whole boxing route. So we have the Elegy Enforcer, otherwise known as JD Vance, and the Ghost Tim Walls. Out of those two, who won tonight? Starting with Gene, and what's your score?
Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious that JD Vance was the winner. He was polished, he was cool, he was collected, he could speak off the cuff, he didn't fall into any traps, he said a lot himself, and the memes out of this video are going to be tremendous. I have Vance at a B plus or an A minus, depending upon what kind of curve you want to have, and I have Walls as a C minus because at least he tried to get specific. He tried to talk about policy. It wasn't good. I think that he ended up becoming flustered a lot because JD Vance came off so much more of a human than the horrible person that the left has painted him out to be. That he is the devil incarnate. That he hates cat ladies. That he's a horrible human being who's a hypocrite that hates Donald Trump. And JD Vance came off as saying, "You know what? I made mistakes." And Stephen Hall is going to steal my thunder here with a great comment saying, "I'm a knucklehead" is all that people will remember from from Tim Walls. So A minus B plus for JD Vance. I would say C minus for Walls.
And Amish. I think Amish. I think Amish.
Sorry, I was muted. So
Don't wake him up. Don't wake him up.
I'm gonna give Vance a B plus. He could have attacked harder, and still in his method, done well. He kind of, I don't know. There was a lot of things that he really could have attacked harder on, and he didn't. Walls, Gene, I disagree with you. I'm a knucklehead isn't going to be the only thing people remember from this debate. It's also going to be I'm friends with school shooters.
Yeah, I think that one. I think that one may stick harder.
People will know he misspoke. I mean,
it won't matter.
Why are we giving the left the charitable definition of what he did, explanation of what he did, when they never do that the other way? I'm sorry, I'm not the better person. So
oh, can I just ask one question on that?
Yeah.
How many more voters would JD Vance have won out if he would have attacked harder on Tim Walls? If he would have attacked him for his National Guard service? If he would have attacked him for his, Born Alive revision?
Oh, no. I mean, he did a good thing switching it up on the censorship versus J6. I think that he one should have just called out, straight up said, your facts are an absolute lie. There were not that many officers injured, and you implied that they were killed, which was wrong.
But that would put off independent voters. That would put off independents, I think.
You may be onto something.
Want Trump to acknowledge that J6 happened and that he actually lost the election, and then we'll move on. Trump's not going to do that, so you have to work that.
That's never happening. And Walls, I'm going to give him a D plus because, I mean, just his facial expressions, he is already like, I can't refresh my Twitter feed without seeing a meme of his confused and scared look. So he made himself infinitely memeable. Vance did too, because he had that smug kind of side look when Walls was prattling on about something, and so yeah, that's going to be a reaction meme too. Yeah, that's where I'm laying it.
And Zelda, what are your thoughts as far as overall score and who won?
I pretty much Amish said it really well. Forty, as I prefer to address him as. He said it exactly well. I would give JD Vance a B plus. He did really well. I mean, I'd take a little bit off because there were things that he could have maybe like stepped on but didn't. But that's just me being kind of picky. I guess it's like Gene said, people probably won't remember the things that I'm more picky on. But still, in terms of Waltz, I'd give him a D plus. Like he was so funny to watch. Like there were moments where he would nod in agreement with Vance, and then he'd be like, "Wait, what?" Like he'd be thrown off looking, and he looked like he was completely unprepared. He looked like he kept trying to look at notes and that he didn't have or wasn't supposed to have, that kind of thing. So that's my final score.
All right. As for me, I'm kind of in the same vein with everybody else. I give Vance an overall score. I mean, fight card wise, I would give him 7 out of 10. If we're doing letter grade, actually, I'm sorry, probably about 8.5, 9 out of 10. If we're doing letter grades, I'd probably be close. I'd probably be about an A minus. For Walls, I'd give him maybe 7 out of 10. Give him low C, C minus. If we're doing letter grades. To me, the biggest takeaways were, one, I love the fact that they kept trying to shake Vance, and he seemed completely unshakable tonight. I never saw anybody get under his skin once, where I saw him get under Walls' skin multiple times. Even with the moderators coming at him over and over and over again, he just ducked it like a pro. He actually took their questions, sidestepped it a couple times, brought his own stuff to bear, and then managed to use the remainder of the time to go back and still answer their questions, which is a very masterful thing to do in a debate, especially when you are dealing with people who like to do that all the time anyway, and then don't even circle back around to the actual question. So for him being as young politically as he is, I think I'm pretty sure even if this campaign doesn't go well, and at this point I don't really see any way that it couldn't, because I mean they're nibbling at the edges on all the different things that they've never been able to touch before. So I mean, this, as much as we thought it wasn't going to, I think because we didn't expect the last debate to sway independents either, and it actually did. I think Vance may have managed to do it again tonight because he stayed mostly on topic, and I think that's one reason why he wasn't attacking as much, because he was trying to stay on topic. Those of us that want to see the bloody noses and the Rocky versus Clubber Lang moments, we miss those things. The independents don't miss those things. They want to hear how their lives are going to get better. I think Vance made that case infinitely better than Walz did. And I think overall, the Trump-Vance campaign is starting to do that infinitely better than the other team because they avoid the media at all costs. Vance and Trump run to the cameras every chance they get.
I think you're dead on. I think that JD Vance is what everybody wanted Ron DeSantis to be during the primary season. If you take JD Vance's debating skills with Ron DeSantis' popularity, that candidate would have beat Trump, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And just one last point. I just want to point out that the moderators turned off JD Vance's microphone when he was trying to fact check the fact checkers there. And Rick was very upset by having the microphone shut off on JD Vance and called the moderators biased and all kinds of names and things like that. Yet Rick Robinson did the exact same thing.
And just did it again.
Now, if you want to talk about that real quick, Vance versus the moderators, A- to D+. When he called them out, they stopped fact checking him.
True.
I didn't even catch that. They did.
And by the way, we haven't talked about the biggest news from today's world of news. And maybe you want to take down the debate footage, the aftermath, and all the hobnobbing there. The biggest news out of today is that my New York Mets defeated the Milwaukee Brewers and are getting ready to take it all. You heard it here. Let's go Mets. LFGM.
So when you're posting the Mets fan drinking picture later, I won't judge.
Oh no. That's part of being the Met fan. Part of being the Met fan is, I think someone said it on Twitter recently. The Mets are an Ivy League psychological experiment, a psyop, to test how long people will tolerate torture before they just give up. And this is the opposite side of that experiment. And JC is no longer my friend. That's just irreprehensible. That's irreprehensible. That's just the worst. It's egregious. It's so many other words that I can't pronounce at this point, and I'm disappointed. JC, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. LFGN.
Oh, hey, Steven. Apparently, I just saw in my feed that meme was actually made by CCP as asshole. So a lot of us are mutuals with somebody who's famous now.
Oh, nice.
Though Trump didn't give credit to her.
Oh, that's
so.
Jeff, I thought we were friends.
Well, were you talking about sports?
Gene is feeling really oppressed right now.
No. You oppressed me. You did. The chat never did. The chat was behind me. I'm just very disappointed.
Ooh, Rick just took on the Politibunny.
It's the Patriot.
Rick is scared.
Chat's gonna turn on him now.
Robinson fears Baradelli.
We just had the last Chat Lives Matter night.
It's not the patriarchy, it's the patriarchy. You're welcome.
It's the chatriarchy.
Thank you, my dear.
Oh, all right. I think we should probably wind this thing down because the Spreaker feed just died anyway. Or if it hasn't, it's about
And it's hot as fucking here. I'm back to making bowl soup.
All right, so let's let Amish off first because nobody wants to hear about his bowl soup. Where can folks find you, man?
Let's see. Tomorrow night you can find, tomorrow night you can find me on Rick and Morty with Rick. Thursday you can find me on Culture Shift with Brad Slager. Hey, two guys who are on the show tonight. Friday I got nothing. Saturday, part 2 of Juxtaposition's deep dive into vampires, and I think if Manorama comes back next week, we may be on that show. I don't know. Anyway, you can also find me as Yoda Secreto on Twitter, though I do have new irons in the fire of maybe getting Ordnance Packard back. And
hang on. I got to do something. This is now contractually required. Free Amish, Elon. Oh, okay, I'm done.
Right? No, that is a timeless shirt and mug.
Jeez, I thought
that'll never get old.
I thought I did a lot of work. My God, do you sleep?
No.
No, not really. Because then I'm, shit posting on Twitter too. And
he has a day job.
And I have a day job. Shit posters of the world unite. So wait, what else?
There's more?
Oh, and toxic masculinity at the end of the month.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, there we go. And
all right. All right, and Gene, where can folks find you?
Oh, well, they can find me oppressed by you. But more importantly, you can find me at GBERARDELLI at GBaradelli on the Twitters, and you can find me on Rumble and YouTube at Buffoon of the Week, where we have daily content at 10 a.m. Eastern Time most days when I'm not in court. And we do a live show Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, that simulcast sometimes here on KLRN Radio, and we really appreciate all of you.
You're not being oppressed, that is.
Well, true. And by the way, just to be serious for a moment, I truly do love Rick. I do joke with him a lot, and a lot of it is well deserved. I mean, he does leave it out there for himself. And I just want to say that I appreciate you, my friend. And even though you oppress me, I'm the bigger man, and I will still always be your friend.
Well, I mean, of course you're the bigger man. Have you stepped on the scale lately?
It's true. Listen, see, I got broad shoulders. I can take it all. Ooh, a fat joke. My kryptonite. Oh no, I haven't heard any of those before. Oh my goodness. Next thing you're gonna say I'm bald. Oh my god. I can't take it.
Well, you're not completely bald. You got your own side. So.
Oh my goodness. And he's gonna say I'm old next, even though he's older.
I can't say
my
that.
God. The pain. Oh my goodness.
Oh, also you can check out my 31 Days of Oingo Boingo that I started today on Twitter. Sorry.
Yeah. I knew there was something else you hadn't plugged yet.
Yeah.
And Z, where can folks find you?
Hello. I'm an occasional contributor on KLRN. Trying to figure out if I want to do a podcast on this network because that's something that scares me but also interests me.
And it would also require work.
What's that?
And it would also require work, which is like your kryptonite.
Shut up. And you can actually find me currently now. You can find me at Zelda A Gabriel on Twitter. Yeah, so that's me.
All right. Well, folks, as for me, it's a long list. I don't think I'm going to give you all of it, but just to give you the short version, I'll be back tomorrow afternoon doing the Rick Robinson Show. That is now Tuesday through Friday between the hours of noon to 3. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so we've got full boat tomorrow night, starting with with myself and Stacey Lennox at 7 p.m. I produce for the Conservative Curmudgeon at 8 p.m. We will likely be simulcasting Behind Enemy Lines Radio at 9 p.m. because we don't have anything running for that spot yet. 10 p.m. should be back for Rick and Orty. Thursday, same schedule in the afternoon, and back for Jen and Rick, 10 p.m. Eastern. Friday, same schedule in the afternoon, back for He Said, She Said, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Aggie time. Saturday, I'll be producing for Front Porch Forensics for 90 minutes. Then we go into our juxtaposition foray into Vamps this month. So we have juxtaposition every week, every Saturday in October, like we always do, or always try to. And then Sunday, I'll be back doing America Off the Rails, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Also, I contribute to Twitchy.com, MisfitsPolitics.com, and TheLoftusParty.com. And I produce their podcast, which drops on Tuesday. You can follow along with me at RowdyBick73, the station at KLRNRadio, and our new news branch at Digital Beacon US. And I think that's everything. And if it's not, I don't care.
And for the love of God, make sure you highlight Saturday night for Jeff. He's been mentioning it the whole time here. 4+ hours of amazing programming on Saturday night. And apparently Jeff is taking all the credit for it.
Yeah. He's the program director. He's allowed. It's kind of his thing.
Well, I mean, also he does have a point because he's been doing ROP on Asgard North ROP on Sundays, but he's doing it Saturday because he's got his Lost Wanderer show on Sunday. He's a busy man.
We're all busy around here. We're all workaholics. What can I say?
Well,
Except for
yeah.
me, I'm not.
Well, yeah,
except for the slacker.
I mean,
Slacker gnome.
All I was going to say about that is, Refrigerator Imp, who is also Gen Z, so not really surprising.
Okay, seriously, fuck. I gotta go. Good night, friends.
Bye.
Have a great night, everybody.
It was a pleasure, and fight the power. And the power.
All right, folks. We are getting out of here because my voice is about to go anyway. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Looks like we ended up the night with 503 paying attention to us, which is astounding to me, but I'll take it. Night, everybody.
503 people who now know you're an oppressor. Bye.
They already knew I was an oppressor. They don't care. Say goodnight.